No waiting around for me, hey? I'm direct. You don't have to worry about me being late. I'm always early. Huh. Welcome to the Condor DM show. I start early to give you guys time to roll in. Tonight is the Condor DM show, Out of Order, and I'm covering Space Opera, the old school game. Very complex game, very interesting. A good amount of meat on the bone, but it's more for the coverage. How can I say it? It's hard to talk about it too much. Hey, Monkey, what's up? Welcome. I don't want to say too much about space opera until I get into the actual rundown for the stream. Um, but yeah, it's space influenced by like a show like Flash Gordon. So it's really good. It's complicated. It's an old gem. Can be hard to get into. It's not for like a. It's not ease of getting into. There's a lot of structure. You got to take your time. You got to teach the game not all at once. You got to teach it more by playing it. You start off with a little bit. Think of like space opera as a weird starting point if you do it right for new players. You bring them in. You start on what like seems like a railroad, and that first bit of railroad, at one point becomes a sandbox. Right? You get to freedom after a certain point. Once you learn the game, that can change. You can start differently. Hey, Craig from Wales. How you doing, buddy? I know you're going to like this one. Space Opera, very, very interesting game. A lot of work on the game master. So it's not so much work on the players, but you got to enforce things. You got to track things. You don't want to over track. You don't want to under track. You really got to know the game as a game master before you start it. And you got to note some things down from the book because it's a game based on pace is really important. And like many old school games, really leans on the wargaming roots as a way to separate itself from D&D. You'll hear a lot of people say Dungeons and Dragons is a war game, and I go like, I'm from the old school era. I know that's completely false, right? And what I mean is it starts off with the roots, but it leans far away. Think about D&D like starting off as we don't get a customer base. We don't know if this experiment's going to work, but we know there's a wargaming customer base. And if we make a game that leans a little bit into them, we can maybe get those customers coming in, right? I know you will. I know you will. This is right up your alley for space. Ship is really important. But D&D was leaning a bit into wargaming and then leaned far away from it because they didn't get a lot of crossover. They didn't lean far enough into it. So a lot of other games coming out figure, well, whatever wargamers D&D didn't get, we can get. And so we'll make our game more for the war gamers because I already heard the complaints from war gamers. So you'll see war gaming really more packed into other games around D&D trying to sort of compete with D&D, trying to grab onto war gamers that didn't cross over to Dungeons and Dragons because a lot of war gamers thought D&D was a weak game that wasn't up their alley. So when you hear people today, maybe like people around what they call the Bro OSR going, oh, it's wargaming D&D, it just tells me right away they were not there. They were not in the old school era because they realized most wargamers opposed D&D. And because of that, there was a lot of games that came out saying, we're the wargaming game. We have the real wargaming roots. And we're going to compete with D&D to say we're more war game to get those potential customers over to their game. And this is early on, so you don't know how popular D&D is going to be. It ended up being just more popular with the non-wargaming crowd. But a game like Space Opera leans a lot into wargaming, right? A lot into tracking, a lot into strategy. But you want to start off small and teach the game through more like gameplay, not dumping the entire game on people. You're not going to make a bunch when you start off as a game master for this game. Make a little bit and then build out from there. Now, once you get players that have went through the game, how you start after that is different. But new players, it takes buy-in, patience, but a lot of work from the game master just to make it go right. Tracking his skills, resources, it's a balance. It's a balance because if you over track, you'll kill the pace of the game. You don't want to be just on fucking checking resources every minute. You could be a little light on that, but you got to be checking it. It matters. The ship in the game for the player characters, how can I say, the ship controls the game and the pace. Think about space opera again, like a bit of a, for new, especially a new group. You start off what seems like a bit of a railroad, but after so many sessions, it opens up. Like you want to introduce the game, put them on a bit of a railroad to teach them the game, right? That's how you're going to teach, not by reading, not by dumping, by getting them in with just knowing just enough to start playing, and then teach them the game through having them do activities, right? And you're not going to throw all the activities at once on them. Don't overwhelm. That's not the point of the game. The game is a gradual thing. So you're teaching through a number of sessions. And then once you really get them up on par with what the game is and they've explored everything, now it's time to open the game and give a bit more freedom. That's where you're going to get. I don't want to say too much because I left all the meat is on the bone in this one. It will be in the rundown that I'm going to cover. No worries. You won't miss out on anything. Everything's going to be covered. Pretty much like a D100 game, percentage, lower, better. So the rules aren't like difficult. It's more like it comes down to management from the game master and then just performance. Really, it's game master gets it right and it's all about pace after that. And it's not about fast cinematic play. This is simulation style. This is definitely up the wargaming realm mindset. So they're structuring the game and they want you to get it right. Getting it right is more important than fast cinematic play. You can be a little light here and there, but not too much. This is a game where raw rules is written is really important because the game is made in such a way that if you step too far out of the line, well, it's not that the game won't work. It just becomes something it's not. It becomes a generic sci-fi. That's not what you want. You're looking for what space opera is trying to offer you, right? To get what space opera is trying to offer you, the experience, you got to follow the rhythm. And the game testers knew this. They knew if you step a little further to the rhythm, oh, the game can work. But then the feel of the game. You know, back in the old school, a lot of people played the games often, especially the designers, more than new designers, right? They played a lot of their games so often, they understood that the feel was more important than just the exact how you write it out, play it out type of thing. So once you at least accept that the feel, the actual experience you feel, that experience straight on is more important than even exactly, oh, you get this rule. No. Rules are all secondary to the experience and what you actually feel. Philo, what's up, buddy? I think you'll like this one, Space Opera. And then I had to replace the war games, so I did that. We'll talk about that afterwards. On the casual, I decided to fill those in. I finally decided what topics. So here's what we're going to do on the casual in the weeks coming up. There's 2 of them left for this month. And one's going to be TSR versus WotC. Oh, that's going to be a good one. But then the next one is going to be something interesting. Anti-D&D. That's what I'm calling the topic. Anti-D&D. There was a lot of anti-D&D in the old school. People that opposed it, games made to push back on it, not just to compete with it. And there's a lot of people that still are a little cranky towards D&D in the new school. And even some of the old school people still complain about D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. So we're going to look at the other side of the fence away from D&D and just look at sort of the anti-D&D mindset of a lot of people. Yeah, Craig definitely is. This is his cup. I'll let him give you more detail on that, but this is definitely his cup of tea. It's the medieval fantasy stuff that I have to bend his arm a bit to get some interest out. Now, he's interested in all this stuff just out of pure being a nerd. But out of gaming, when I talk about medieval stuff, a lot of games, even like D&D, he's like, yeah, whatever. I think chivalry and sorcery is definitely up his alley for you know what? That sounds something he was saying he'd be more into. But like D&D, not his thing. Space is his thing. Space. space, miniatures, all that good stuff. 5 minutes, we'll start. You guys know the detail. We go into the influences in the game birth, how to run it from the game master point of view, character creation for the players, and then we go into the setting, or how the setting idea works for that game. Then we go into what makes it either better or different. Then we go into criticisms and defenses, and we finish off with what I call worth mentioning. Just stuff that just didn't get compacted into the other things. It's like, oh, this is worth mentioning, right? That's exactly it. And that's how we do every stream for these games. That's always the rhythm, same way every time. Even in games where there's not an exact setting, like Chivalry Sorcery, there was an exact setting. It's built for the real world, but the way I was able to cover it was, how does it apply to the real world? So when I looked at setting, that's sort of how I went at looking at setting for that game, was how do you apply it to the real world? How does it function with the real world as we know it, right? Yeah, and this one's golden age, definitely, baby. Definitely. I know another one Craig is definitely interested in, because it's not your typical D&D stuff, is Bushido, Japan feudal era stuff. That's going to be fun. And Shadowrun is, well, I don't know where Craig stands on that. I mean, I just know in general, it can be a popular game for a lot of people. It's a mix of genres, a very deep mix of dragons and sci-fi and the whole 9 yards. And again, I'm doing Shadowrun, but if anybody gets a chance, if you haven't watched Earth Dawn, my stream on Earth Dawn, you might want to check that out, because in reality, the connection between Earth Dawn and Shadowrun is Earth Dawn is considered like the ancient past of Shadowrun. A lot of people don't know that. So there's a connection there. There's an assumed history with it, because the people that make the game are the same. So Earth Dawn is supposed to be the ancient past. And Black Rose made it. Good timing. 3 minutes. Sci-fi, space opera, Flash Gordon, influences, structure. Look, I liked it because I can handle complex systems. And the reason I can is I got used to so many. Like if you go back to the old school, a lot of games were hard to run for the game master. Just period. But once you get used to one, the others start becoming easier. The other thing is to be picky. A lot of the side games, you couldn't have too many casual players. They could flop in games like this. So you had to really pick really good players for a lot of this stuff to work, right? That's why they weren't made for the new person coming in. Like Space Opera, if you're like a new player, you're going, I want an easy game to get into. Wrong game. I'll take you to Call of Cthulhu if you want that, right? Call of Cthulhu is a little easier for new players. A complex game like the Palladium games can be complex, but they're okay for new players. A ton of games just assume you're more up the war gamer, hard thinking alley. So if you take, there's a lot of games like Space Opera where if you take in a very generic D&D player who sort of follows other leaders, doesn't do a lot of work, those guys can have a hard time in a game like Space Opera, to be honest. Just to be real with you, right? And then there's standards of the game master. I put pretty high standards on players, so. But it's hard to run. So there's a lot of high standard on me. The game sort of expects that too, so it's not like it's just me being too picky, right? But if you ease up on these games for generic players, it doesn't mean they can't work. Like Space Opera can work for a semi-lazy player, but then it becomes a sci-fi generic game. Like it's hard to get them to stick on the path of doing things right. That you got it, Bill. It's very important. The game just assumes, and so you got to remember, Pinnacle Entertainment Group, creators of Savage World, just had, oh yeah, Jody Black passed. Well, that's a shame. That is a shame. Rest in peace, Jody Black. All right. But yeah, back in the day, you're assumed you're making the games for hobbyists. I think it's before they realize the type of people that we're going to be drawn to a lot of these games. We're going to be the majority, sadly, not hobbyist. But you're talking about, Bill's right. It's made for the hobbyist. For what they don't realize is a small minority at the time. They think there's going to be a lot of them. No, what you discover over just the experience of this new hobby is that it's not as many as you think, sadly. My favorite setting is Christian books. The camp, it contains a medieval planet and source of Star Trek Prime's directive. Interesting stuff. Geez, didn't exactly know that. Well, here we are. It's time to lean into the start. Between parts, we'll have a little talk. Don't worry. I'll add some here, as I'm going through this. But we'll start off with space opera, influences, and birth of the game. Space opera is exactly what its name says, an attempt to take big, sweeping, cinematic science fiction and turn it into a playable system. But unlike later games, it leans heavily into detail, simulation, and scale, not fast cinematic play. Pulp sci-fi roots 1930s to the 1950s. Before RPGs even existed, the foundation was already set. Pulp magazines like Amazing Stories and Astounding Science Fiction defined the tone. Massive empires, strange alien races, scientists, explorers, and soldiers crossing galaxies. Serial heroes like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers shaped the idea of adventure across planets. Tech that is explained just enough to feel real, but not fully grounded. What carries into the game? Multiple star systems, alien diversity, tech-heavy problem solving, exploration plus conflict mixed together. Early wargaming DNA, 1960s to 1970s. Before RPGs, designers were already simulating war and movement. Tabletop wargaming influenced movement systems, combat resolutions, tactical thinking, something Bill was pointing out there. This mindset carried directly into space opera. It's not just storytelling, it is structured simulation. This is why space opera ends up heavy on rules, concerned with realistic outcomes for the time, built like a system you operate, not just improvise in. Again, rules is written is really important for this game. It's structured in a specific way, not a sort of free do what you want way. That's why it can be very challenging to game master, because you're not just loose in what you're doing most of the time. The RPG explosion after Dungeons and Dragons. Once D&D hit, everything changed. Companies realized you could take any genre and turn it into a role-playing system. Sci-fi was an obvious next step. What if instead of dungeons, it's space? But different companies took different directions. Traveler, streamlined, skill-based, open-ended. Space opera, maximalist, detailed, simulation-heavy. This is a key distinction. Traveler abstracts, really does. Space opera tries to model everything. And there is Craig just dropping gems in the chat. I love Craig. Thank you, Craig, as always. Blueprint for Hansel. I didn't even know that. That's a beautiful thing. But it's not a surprise. Craig loves his sci-fi stuff. Cinematic sci-fi impact late 70s. Then Star Wars hits. Suddenly sci-fi is fast, visual, character-driven. The audience expectation shifts hard towards space battles, heroic arcs, alien encounters with personalities like Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers. Space opera reacts, but not by simplifying. Instead, it tries to support that scale, but through rules. Give you tools to run starships, planetary systems, alien species, tech layers, so you get a mismatch. Cinematic inspiration, simulation, execution. Publication. Space Opera by Fantasy Games Unlimited, released in 1980. Designers, Edward E. Symbolist, Phil McGregor, publishers, FGU, known as heavy systems like known for heavy systems like Aftermath, which I've already covered, but that's a really heavy system. Design Gold, build a complete science fiction engine, not just a setting, not just a framework, a full toolkit. This is why the game includes detailed character generation, extensive skill systems, starship construction. Oh man, this game is a lot of fun. Alien creation rules to make it's there is some creativity a game master can bring to it. It's not so much in the gameplay, but it's building up the place, right? Equipment and tech breakdowns. What it was trying to be. Space opera is not trying to be fast, light, or beginner friendly. Like Bill was saying earlier, this is not made for your casual. This is made for the assumed wargaming mindset, like a guy who's already a hard thinker coming into this and expects you to be okay with the fact that it's not beginner friendly. In a way, it is beginner friendly for those guys. If it's too easy, it might turn off players like that. It is, again, it's trying to be comprehensive, flexible across all sci-fi systems, deep enough to simulate a universe. Think of it like a toolbox for building sci-fi campaigns, not pre-shaped experiences. Bottom line, rooted in pulp sci-fi adventure, built on a wargaming structure born during the D&D expansion wave, reacting to cinematic sci-fi like Star Wars, executed as heavy simulation-first systems. That's the wargaming part. That combination is exactly why space opera stands out. It tries to give you everything instead of guiding you into one style of play. Okay, so there you go. That's the influences I covered, the birth, how it started through D&D, the expansion, the sci-fi, and basically what it was looking for. Now we're going to get into how does a game master run space opera. Star Wars story is mostly an adaptation of Lensman's Be cool. It's I find this stuff so valuable, Craig, because it's one thing to know their end result, but it's like what I find good with Craig and knowing that some of this material is go read it yourself because you never know what it's going to inspire from you. It's like, well, if that created Star Wars, well, man, that means it inspires something pretty deep. Why don't you go read it? Because you never know what it's going to inspire in you, your ideas. Get something similar. Learn why something is. Wisdom is not just knowing about something or having a slight understanding. It's understanding the underlayers. Like if this is where Han Solo came from, it's the wisdom is really deeply understanding where it came from and why. So it's basically these books that he's talking about are going to provide you real wisdom, not just some knowledge, right? That's really important. Wisdom lets you create with your mind. It opens the doors for your own creation. It's one thing to be going, oh, I like Han Solo, and that can inspire you. But there's limits. Why not go see what inspired that? That's going to open more doors for you. Space opera, how to run it. You're not just running sessions, you are managing a functioning sci-fi environment. If you treat it like loose storytelling, it breaks. It's just not that. If you treat it like a system, it works. It's made for war gamers first, for the most part, and then trying to get something more out of it beyond that. You run systems first, story second. This is the biggest adjustment. The game expects travel to matter, resources to matter, skills to actually gate what players can do, right? So it's really basically enforcing the way skills function onto the players without too much looseness. You don't hand wave outcomes, you check them against the system. Seems every IP is a ripoff from someone. I've learned Stargate movie was a ripoff from Call of Cthulhu. It is. A lot of the original storytelling ideas, it's hard to expand outside of them So very few people come up with this stuff in reality. In reality, you could probably cut back to storytelling down to so many people. But it's the expansion off of them and taking their ideas and expanding them out that gets you more ideas, but originally comes from a small group of sources. That's true. It really is true. You would think there's 50 million ways to write a story. In a way, there's not exactly. So once you sort of learn this, and you've been around for like 1,000 years, you realize there's not 50 million ways. So what do you do to make more stories than just this typical line? Well, you take those and you expand them out to create differences, right? That's what you find out. There's not 50 million ways to use language. See, if you go back to Rome, you really discover how storytelling is. Language is very interesting, how you can use it from politics to speeches to even storytelling. And there's a limitation to how you can really use it. And guess what? You'd be like, well, haven't we learned a lot over thousands of years? Not really. Once you learn so much, and then you spend a few hundred years trying to learn even more, you start finding out you've hit your limits. Like you've learned, now what can you do with what you've learned? That's what it really comes down to. That's why there's a lot of things that are more, you find a source that inspired this. Well, those ideas can inspire more, but it's all going to be connected to one line. And some of the best storytellers in history are the ones we know of as far back as Rome. And a lot of their gimmicks for storytelling extends all the way up through almost every source material you can think of. Right? And it's amazing to discover this. If you go to people that really study this stuff, they can show you the lines all the way back to certain Roman storytellers, where you're just amazed. Really, all this sci-fi yeah, it's all coming from this line. It's all coming from this line, right? And so that's, I guess, for some people that can be disappointing. I doesn't disappoint me. It's just interesting to know, right? So back to how do you run it? You are not just running sessions. You are managing a functioning sci-fi environment. If you treat it like loose storytelling, it breaks. If you treat it like system, it works. So this is, again, you run systems first, story second. Again, the biggest adjustment here, the game expects travel to matter, resources to matter, skills to actually gate what players can do. That's really important. You don't handwave outcomes. You check them against system. In practice, if they want to hack something, skill plus time plus situation. If they travel, fuel, time, navigation. These are checking how resources are going. You don't get too extreme, but you do need to keep checking because it's important for the field and for the game, for the challenge. Oh, probably feel. You get my point. You get my point. That's good. That I get the haha. You get my point. If they fight, positioning, weapons, outcome. If you're running a machine, not just narrating events. So you're running a machine, not just narrating events. You're running a system. Prep the environment, not the plot. Again, a lot of games where you hear a lot of people talk about plot nowadays. Go back to old school, plot is completely ignored at the start of a game. A lot of games just say plots will develop in the game. So it's like the idea that you pre-plan a plot out, it's not necessary. You want to get into the game, get into the gaming, and through that, it will build itself in front of you. Your mind will latch onto something, and most likely it will line up more with what the players are doing, and those plots that you develop are going to be better than what you could pre-think. That's why they say it's almost better to go into the game and sort of pick up the plot as you're going, because that's going to line up more with what's going on than anything. And then you can develop it. Once you start figuring out what the plot is, then you put all the work in, right? Do not write a story. Instead, build a sector or region of space, like building the world that they're going to play in. Key factions. Factions are important. Corporations, governments, pirates, aliens. Trade routes or travel paths. A few active problems, conflicts already in motion. Then let players interact with it. So what it's saying here is don't build 50 million things. When you start off one of these games, you build in a few places, a few factions, a few of this. Keep it easy. Get into the game. Let them deal and understand the basic stuff, the few that you've created, and then you expand as you go through the game. Like you expand as you're playing. Don't try to build this massive thing right away. So evolve it, let it develop through the gameplay, through what you're seeing, through your ideas that come to you as you're playing the game. What this avoids overall is railroading, forced outcomes. So what it's saying is, if you don't want to get your players on a forced railroad path, don't try to plan everything, because guess what? Then you got to keep them on a railroad. They have to go through the plan. If you just go in with a small bit and you sort of get them on guidance to sort of get themselves in, then you can let them make choices, and through that you develop what it's sandboxing. See, this is where I say, I put out a video recently about sandboxing, and a lot of people misunderstand sandboxing, but that's because of D&D modules. D&D modules were becoming unpopular, but what they did was try to redefine sandbox. So the module, they could pretend a module is a sandbox, but really it's just a railroad with more options. But it's a trickery to get you to go back to buying modules instead of doing your own thing, because these games are fucking with modules. That's a thing that D&D doesn't want to admit. Traveler, all this, the create it as you go type of thing, this fucks with modules. It's teaching game masters, guys that might go back and run D&D, how to run their own games with a sandbox with no module at all. I mean, and you would think to a degree they're almost doing it on purpose. Because the modules are a big selling point for D&D, and imagine you're competing. What's one thing you'd want to knock out? Module sales, because they're big. And so what you do is you teach game masters how to do a real sandbox. So I had a bunch of guys mad at me about my sandbox video, but I'm like, I know it sounds alternative to what you learned for the module sandbox, but this is real. What I'm describing in the video is real sandbox. The reason you have an alternative opinion, some of the D&D guys out there, even the old school guys, the reason you think I'm wrong is you go by the module redefining of sandbox. And by doing that, that's an alternative to what I'm saying. It doesn't match. But what I'm telling you is not sandbox that you learn from D&D. I'm telling you sandbox that you learn from space opera, Traveler. Like, it's not a D&D thing. Sandboxing is sort of developed outside of D&D. D&D is a bit of a railroad module focus. A lot of it, early on, it's a bit of sandboxing. But those concepts never got drilled in because they weren't money makers. But these games don't bother with modules in the same way. So they go after the sandbox so you can run the game without the module. How do you run space opera without a pre-made module, without a pre-made adventure? Sandbox. How do you run Traveler without pre-made adventures? Sandbox. And so they build the things you need to know how to make your own thing, sandbox, in the actual game. And this is a way for them to put out games without needing to put out all the extended modules to go with the games. So what I teach you in that is correct. Like my video is not incorrect. Old D&D guys just don't know that, the ones stuck on modules. They don't know that the sandbox I described came before what they think is a sandbox. And I felt bad because I've seen some of the newer people in the WotC world describing a sandbox. And I'm like, that's not a sandbox. It is the redefining of what a sandbox is, but it's really just a railroad with more options is what you're mentioning. Let me teach you a sandbox. And I had some guys cursing me out. Well, he's wrong. He doesn't know what a sandbox is. Oh, yes, I do know what a sandbox is. And what I described is 1,000,000% accurate. Anyway. Okay. So again, what this avoids railroading and forced outcomes. What this creates, players making decisions that actually matter in a living setting. Sandbox. Living setting. That's what they mean, sandbox. It's using different terms back in the day because they're not using sandbox to describe what I call a sandbox. What was called later a sandbox is this. And then once that became a term, that's when D&D latched onto it. So let's redefine it so we can pretend that we're doing sandboxing with modules, but we're not. Like what we're doing with modules will not match what Traveler's doing. Will not match what these other games are doing. So it's just too, let's steal the term because it's popular. That's what D&D did. They steal a popular term that's being used to describe what the other games are doing. And then they redefined it. And that's a competition market. You're competing with each other. That's why there's these two alternative views of what a sandbox is. I talk about real freedom. They'll talk about it's redefining adventure. Well, sandbox is meant to be freedom. The original term first used was to describe this, not D&D. It's something D&D took after it became a thing and then tried to redefine it. A lot of guys just don't know that, and I didn't bother in detail correcting them until now, so now they know. H just thought it was great. It ran for years and provided players with real-time updates, events, and Imperium. There you go. Okay. Control the scope early, or it will spiral. This game can get out of control fast. At the start, keep the players, one ship in one region with limited resources. It's about teaching the game, so you don't want to overwhelm. So the start, even for a group of that experience, sometimes starting with limitations is a great way to ease them into the next game anyway. There you go. Bill, you're old school. I can fucking tell. Wilderness adventure with Wilderness Railroad. You get it. But it's player freedom to do what they want. At the end of the day, that's why you don't pre-make the plot, pre-make this. You let players sort of choose their path, and improvising is just considered a thing you're supposed to do as a game master. At least that's what these side games all just assume, but they give you the tools to improvise. Like, here's all the tools you need to improvise, and then you're expected to, because remember, we're not talking about the majority that came in later that didn't have these skills. These games are coming out for war gamers, expecting people to be skilled, expecting people to have the mind for this. So, and they're unforgiving. Like, there's guys out there that have a hard time improvising. Here's what a game like this would say to you. Here's what these guys would say to you. What are you doing in this hobby? I know that sounds awful, but they would just say, if you can't improvise, you should be playing the game. Like, hopefully you can do that, but you should not be game mastering. Have to buy tickets to get on the train. Pretty much social. The one-shots can be social contracts. You can start off with a bit of a railroad in this, but it's understandable why this would start off as a bit feeling like a railroad, sort of a controlled path, but it's meant to open up to the sandbox freedom. And the only reason even this game tries to put you a bit on the railroad at the start is just to teach you the game. It's to say, if I dump everything on you at once with the freedom, it can be done, but it's going to be a lot harder for you to take the game in and learn it. So the only reason the first few sessions you feel like you should be limiting the players to one mission, one ship, very basic sort of run, like basic on purpose, even basic with what they're going to have to do with the ship, because you're teaching them think step by step. So don't have them trying to do everything on the ship. Just have a few things happen. Have them on a simple job, right? That's what the game, when you're reading it, tells you. Have them on a simple job. Not a complex job, a simple job. Because the idea is to be learning. Like, it's just taking things in. You're doing the basics on purpose. But then after like 2 or 3 sessions of doing that basic mission, learning the game, now it's, okay, here's your freedom. You're back in the sandbox. Don't worry about it. Now, after that run, if your players are comfortable and you're comfortable after, like on the second run, you start. I warned my players when I first went to do this. I said, here, make me a deal. I said, we're probably going to, we could flop on the first run, but we don't walk away from the game. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, there's a good chance we're going to flop and we're going to start over. Like, start over. I'm like, yeah, just be ready for it. Probably going to flop. I'm teaching the game. I try to have everything ready. I got to find out where the pacing is, but it could take us a few starts. I was not wrong. On my first run, it took me 3 starts to get to a comfortable place where we got properly past that first railroad point and into freedom. Then we were good. Then we were fine. I never had to do that again, but that was my first time running it. I just warned them. I'm new to this as much as you are, so we're all new together. So again, keep them on one ship and one region with limited resources. If you don't, the jump systems too fast. They accumulate gear and complexity. You lose control of tracking everything because you're trying to learn how you should pace tracking. You don't want to track too much of the resources all the time because if not, the pace dies. But you don't want to not track. Resources are important. So you got to find that middle ground. Where's your comfort zone? Where's the feel as a game master to know, okay, time check resources, back into playing the game. And just how frequently are you jumping there? That's what you're really learning to do. And it's not like they just spelled it out for you and say, there's a perfect way to do it. No, you got to get a feel and a rhythm going on checking, right? So it's not extreme, it's light, but it needs to be consistent. So whatever your system is, just consistent. So you lose control of tracking everything. That can kill. Tight scope early, stable campaign later. So the idea with that sort of straightforward focus is, and this is what it's saying to you, tight scope early, stable campaign later. And campaign really means sandbox, right? The free sandbox for long-term gaming. You are starting where the tight is just a limit about like, oh, you can do 50 things. So you don't want them trying to figure out 50 things with the ship or trying to figure out a complex mission. You want them just learning how to do the basics. So then the complexity comes in, they're mentally ready for it. That's all this is, right? Okay, use the rules selectively. You don't need all of them at once. That's the point of what I was saying. Tight scope. You don't need to be using everything at once. The system is dense on purpose. Do not try to use every subsystem immediately. Instead, start with basic skill resolution, basic combat, simple travel. Then layer in advanced ship rules, detailed tech, complex interactions. You are phasing the system in, not dumping it on the table. It's really important for teaching because it's less about reading and teaching or even reading and talking. This is a game where it expects you to get on the bicycle and start riding until you're good enough to get rid of the wheels, right? The extra wheels. Starships are the centerpiece. They really are. Everything revolves around ships, travel, combat, exploration, survival. Treat the ship as a shared party asset. So it's a group's ship, not an individual, the group ship. Almost like a character. That's how important the ship is. To a guy like Craig, he's going to appreciate it. Like, oh, the ship is super important. It's your baby. So almost like a character. It has capabilities. It has limits. It defines what the group can do. If the ship is weak, the campaign is survival focus. If the ship is strong, the campaign becomes power projection. So the shape of the ship decides even the way you experience the game. If it's a rough ship, you're barely getting around, man, you're focused on just surviving and just bringing that thing barely. If it's strong, man, you can get out there, kick ass, go everywhere, get everything done. So your experience with the game and your characters really does depend on the shape of your ship. So getting your ship in good shape obviously opens up a different experience. If you're not doing good work on your ship, or if it's behind and damaged, like you're not taking care of it well, you have a completely different experience with the game. Think of it like two different games. And really is for feel. Remember, for feel. Make time and distance matter. Do not compress everything. Travel time should exist. Delay should exist. Repairs should take time. So when you're trying to get a ship repaired, it should just be like, oh, instant, easy. You got to get the people down. You got to get the tools. You got to get the people. You got to get the money. It should take time to get a ship repaired. Because once you do, you change the experience. It's how important it is. So pace it. Make people work for it. This creates tension because you don't got just a fast working ship right away. That thing's damaged. You can't just move right away. So it creates tension, planning, consequences. It makes it matter. So then to the players, it matters, right? They take it serious. Without this, the system loses its weight. It turns into a generic sci-fi game. If the ship doesn't matter, if the ship becomes secondary and you can just instantly get it fixed and it doesn't mean anything to the game, to the feel, well, that really starts taking away from this game. And that's a real thing. Remember, feel is more important than the rules sometimes. Really is. Old school really focuses on that. A lot of games. Skill gating is real. Don't bypass it. Players will try to just do it anyway. You could try, Don't let them skip. If they lack the skill, they struggle or fail. If they had the skill, they shine. So if they pick the right skills and it lines up with the situation, good on you. Smart choice. It pays off. If you haven't, you're going to have to find someone who has the skill, has the thing. This creates role protection. So it matters who's who and what they can do. Meaningful character differences, right? If you have a combination of skills, you can get things done a lot quicker instead of having the same skills, right? Like, so who you pick, how a party is put together. And this is a game where sometimes it's about who the character is. In this game, it actually matters what party balance and role. So this is unlike the previous games we talked about. Encounters are situational, not balanced. Do not try to balance encounters. Instead, present situations as they logically exist. Examples, a pirate ship might outgun them. Why would it not care about balance? Because it's saying to you, okay, if the pirate ship outguns you, you're going to have to talk to some pirates. So don't just run into combat. Get it? Like, that's what the consequence. So the game isn't trying to balance, like, oh, it has a perfect ship you can fight. No, this ship outguns you. It means it's going to force you into wise decisions. Talk before you battle. You don't got the upper hand here. So, for example, a pirate ship might outgun them. A station might be heavily secured. So you can't just go on it and do like murder hobo shit. You got to talk to people. An alien world might be hostile. So you can't just go down there, fucking make all your business and get everything you want. No, you got to find the right people. Be careful. You could be attacked. You got to be concerned. Players are expected to avoid, negotiate, and plan. Combat is not always the answer. So this is role playing at its finest. We're saying to you, you don't just run into combat. This is not a video game. The game is not made for a video game. You could just simply be outgunned, but that doesn't mean it's over for you. It means you got to do the other part of the game. Role play. It is a role-playing game, right? So you got to role play. Track resources lightly, as I said earlier, but consistently. I have a very little experience with space opera games. Does TPK happen often if the ship is outgunned and blown up? Well, it comes down to how you play, Philo. And I think you'll understand this too. So if you're asking me, if you go in against an outgunned ship, most of the time you die. Yeah. That's why you don't go in when you're outgunned. So, like in that situation, because likely you'll die. That's why you want to negotiate first. That's why you want to role play before you go into combat. It's meant, that threat is meant to, so yeah, you can get wiped out, you can get boarded. Sometimes it's not total party kill. Sometimes you become prisoners. Your ship is shot down. Maybe your ship is survived, but they're going to board you, and now you're prisoners. Maybe you're sold as slaves. That can happen. Selling grenades of StarCraft for space opera are getting hard to find now. I recommend any of the 3 volumes. Noted. Very good recommendation. But so, Philo, it doesn't mean total party kill. A lot of times it will. But could you be boarded, taken as prisoners, or sold as slaves? Yeah. That's still bad for you. You could even consider, for some players, that would be game over. Some groups might count that as like, okay, we're done. It doesn't mean you have to be done. You can still, ironically, go through some crazy shit and role play yourself out of that. That's part of the gimmick. But most of the time, likely, you're dead. Total party kill. But likely. Again, but that threat means that's your excuse for going, okay, instead of us all dying, let's talk to these guys. And the game master is made to open that opportunity up for you. So don't think you can't talk. If you try to talk, I mean, unless you're talking like a fool, like just use your common sense, likely the opportunity to negotiate will be there. The game master will open that up for you. So don't feel like that's going to be the impossible part. Just be willing to do it, right? And then don't talk a certain way to the pirates, or they might shoot you down because you're outgunned, right? Track resources. I've been drilling at this, but it's really true. Lightly means don't overdo it because you'll slow the pace down. But when you get to the rhythm you like, And it has to not just be like, woo, a big gap in between, but it is lightly, but you need to get consistent on the rhythm. So you check it every so often. It sort of has to feel like that amount of time goes by each time that you're really going in. Unless things are happening, then you got to check for other reasons. But outside of that, pretty get into a rhythm checking. You don't need to go insane with bookkeeping, but you must track fuel, ammo, at least broadly, especially if you're using it, credits, ship condition. This creates pressure, decision making without a plot. Without it, the game loses its structure. So it just feels like you don't got much to do. Like the game dies on the vine, if you get what I'm saying. So this stuff, make this stuff important to the players so they're always concerned. We got to get this, we got to get, that's what keeps the game active. It's making sure what are our resources. If you do get into a fight, how is that going with ammo? How much did you use? Do you got to do it up? You got to get the ship repaired. Those concerns just keep you giving you a reason. Like the pressures, these are the tiny pressures Traveler tells you about, where you don't need a plot to get the game moving. Pressures like, oh, money, you got to get something repaired. That keeps you active in the game. Tone, serious sci-fi, not comedy chaos. The system works best when the world feels dangerous, logical, consistent. If you run it loose and silly, the heavy rules feel pointless because the heavy rules seem to lean into something serious. So if you're trying to be silly with it, it will go against it. Like other parts of the game will feel like it's not, those two things aren't meant to go together. Players stop engaging with the systems. You're not taking it serious. Well, you're not taking it serious. And that part is serious. So if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Bottom line, running space opera means you build a functioning sci-fi environment. You enforce systems and consequences. You let players interact with that structure. If you do that, the game feels deep and rewarding. If you don't, it collapses into slow, confusing chaos. So when you get this right, it's a fucking amazing game. I swear to fuck, Space Opera is a really, really good game. But you got to do what I'm telling you. Right? Because if you do it the other way around, the game falls apart. And what I'm telling, the good part of I'm telling you about this game is no longer good. Then you'll criticize, then you won't like it. So what it's made to do, if you enjoy that, it does it well, is what I'm saying. It just doesn't do the other things well. So if you try to use a system to play a certain loose way, it just doesn't give you the tools. It doesn't give you a system that's going to aid in that type of loose play. So it doesn't make that more fun. That's just you doing it. What it is offering, it offers a lot of meat on the bone for that. Space Opera, character creation. So that was for the Game Master. This is for you players. Space Opera character creation. Character creation is not quick and not casual. It is a build process where choices matter and mistakes carry forward. You are building a specialist, not a generalist. You are not good at everything. You pick a direction, pilot, engineer, scientist, soldier, technician. Skills define you heavily. Very skill-based game. Result, each character has a clear role. The last couple of games I covered, it's more about who the person is. This game is about the party role. So this is quite opposite from Chivalry and Sorcery and all that. And it's different than the last couple of games. Very different. This cares about role. Overlap is limited. The group functions as a team, not clones. Stats here, unlike some of the other games, matter more than you expect. Attributes are not filler. They directly affect skill chances, combat effectiveness, and this leans a bit more into the combat than some of the other games. Even though it's still dangerous, it doesn't say, it's not like just survive, avoid. That's why it's saying if your ship is in good shape, you can fight. This game does lean a bit more into combat. So does the Bushido game I'm going to cover coming up. I know some of the old games, a lot of them say avoid combat, avoid combat, avoid combat. What I like about this and Bushido is it doesn't say avoid combat. It says you go into survival mode if you don't have a great, like if your ship's not in shape, then you should play like you're avoiding combat. Or if you're outgunned, there are reasons to avoid combat. But if it's in your favor, it's in your favor, baby. It doesn't say run away. So that's, if you like a little bit of action, you could find it here. This game leans a bit more into it. The stats, I said stats matter. I said skill chances, combat effectiveness, survival. Bad stats equal real limitations. Important. You don't fix it later easily. What you roll or what you build sticks. Skill selection is the core of the character. This is where most of your identity comes from. You choose technical skills, combat skills, knowledge skills. Skills are not broad, they are specific. Meaning, you can't just say, I'm good with tech. No, you are good at a specific thing within tech. So it's not about you having a general list of skills and you're good at, it's spread. No, this game sort of forces you to be a specialist. So it's like, well, pick out of the tech what you're going to be really good at. And that's your area, right? That's your area. Again, some skills might not seem efficient all the time. But the game is like telling you this. When you finally do need it, you're going to fucking love the fact that you have it. Oh, Zay, welcome. You're just at the character creation part. A space opera. Fucking fabulous game. Great fucking game. A game that leans a little bit more into combat, especially in the space area, right? A lot of other games in space are about survival and avoid combat. This is one of the rare old games that if things are in your favor, it's just go ahead, do some action. Now, there's situations where it's not in your favor and avoid like other games, but if it's in your favor, it doesn't say shy away from it. It doesn't say just go fight everything, but it just says if it's in your favor, it's like saying you could talk some shit, all right? Or you could talk a bit more. If you outgun the pirates, you could talk some shit. If they outgun you, you talk less shit. So that could have specific thing. Background is functional, not just flavor. Your background affects what skills you get. So your background's really important here because it's a skill-based game, and your background affects what you get as skills, what you know, where you fit in the setting. This is not just story, it's mechanical impact. So what it's taken is something you might use for storytelling, like a bit more of who your character is. It says, it also affects how your character is going to be built. Your background helps decide what skills you can have, where you fit in the setting. So it does have mechanical impact to the character, not just what you can do based on pushing some form of story. Equipment and starting position matters. You are not starting equal. Your gear defines early survival, shapes what jobs you can take depending on what you have early on. Your position, crew member, or independent operator attached to an organization. This affects how the campaign begins for you, right? Your options always open the door or close them. So that depends on what your experience is going to be early on. The process takes time. Accept that up front, player. This is not a fast system. It's not meant to be. Expect multiple steps during character creation, especially checking tables and during like gameplay. Multiple steps, checking tables, making deliberate choices. If rushed, you end up with a weak or unfocused character. So when you're making a character in this game, it says, get your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back, my friend, take your time, pick wisely. And it is made for you to pick wisely. So it says take your time, and we got the shit for you to dig into. Well, this is worth it, especially if you're someone who, you heard a lot of the old school games I've talked about saying, a lot of them are about avoid combat. This game finally says, look, if you have a bad ship, like that's not in good repair, avoid combat. If your enemy outguns you, avoid combat. Go to negotiation, go to roleplay, right? But it does say, pretty much, it's unlike the other games. If things are in your favor, go ahead and kick some ass, dude. Right? Now you can be a bit more cocky. Now you don't have to just think of, I need to avoid everything. Bushido, the Japanese feudal game I'll cover this Saturday, has the same thing. And I figured this would be fun because I've covered quite a few old school games that really say shy away from combat. These ones don't say exactly to shy away from combat in the same way. So not every old school game was, and even every old school game that leaned into wargaming, not every one of them said stay away from combat. There's a balance. There's still reasons to stay away from it, which are still wise in this game, but it does open you up a bit more if you're in a better situation. Where in other games like Traveler, even if you're in a good situation, it still says you should avoid combat. Like impossible, really. And to a degree, there's benefits in avoiding combat here, but you're just in a more better situation where you can be a bit more cocky. Yeah, I got that covered too, Bill. Star Frontier. You go check out that stream when you get time. I get that one covered, and that 1,000,000% agree with you. That's a good system. That still says to avoid combat probably even more than space opera, but you can have fun with it if you want to do combat, right? This one, it just leans a little bit more into saying, hey, we don't mind here, right? Failure points exist during character creation. It's important to listen to. You can end up underpowered, miss key skills. That's why you want to take your time. So important. Oh yeah. But see, that's a great thing. It's like old systems don't always push combat. There's a reason they call it a role-playing game. Because negotiation with the enemy is more important than fighting the enemy. Because you're looking to survive, right? That's why people, you might not hear, the old games might not always talk about non-combat encounters or even seem to focus on pushing social interaction in the towns or cities. But don't get it wrong. Social interaction through negotiation, through talking to potential enemies, that exists. That's a real thing. So role play is deep, but it's more to do with the action and less to do with the casual side, which is something we get into later in the role-playing hobby. But early on, when it's assumed you're out there in the action, in the dungeon, in the space, looking for shit where you can get in combat, the form of social interaction becomes negotiation with everything you're encountering, instead of like you casually going to the town and talking to people, right? That gimmick comes a little bit later. It's something you could sort of just do early on, but it's really not talked into. It becomes something that's expected later in the evolution. So, okay. So, miss key skills. Again, this is why you want to take your time with character creation. Create a character that struggles. That can happen. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it's like things like this. Say you're going to want to be a soldier with a higher rank. So here's how this works. To get a higher rank, you can spend so much of your years, your life, right? So you spend like, okay, I'll give it 4 years to become a rank 2. Okay, like a higher rank as a soldier. You're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, you roll. And when you roll, one of the outcomes could be that you tried to give 4 years to it, and you died fighting. And that means the stats you rolled for that character. See, at the start, you roll the stats, you roll everything else. Then you go into that part, and you're given a gambling game before you even start to play. As a player, you're given a gambling game. We haven't even started. I'm going to give you a gambling game. You're a soldier. Do you want to be a higher rank soldier? Yeah. Well, you can do, but you got to spend so many years. Okay, I'll do that, but it's not automatic. You got to roll to see if you went out fighting to earn the rank, if you lived during the combat. And so in that roll, you can die. And that means you got to roll the stats for your next character all over again. Right? So if you rolled a good set of stats, you can't use those. Can I use those? No. You got to roll new ones. Then we can go back. Do you want to gamble? And the more you gamble, the more you can rank your character up. If you get the right rolls, the more it can open you up to get more skills because years are going by. And you have to spend your life. You're like you literally using years of your life, like money, to upgrade your character. That's what it means by you can die during character creation. So if you're wondering how you die, it's from saying you can start for free. You can start off as a basic thing. But to go beyond the basic, you start putting your life on the line. You can't it doesn't just automatically assume you went and fought for 4 years and you lived. It just says, well, okay, there's a chance you live. And if you do, now you're this. Sort of. So it can create a character that struggles. It's not the same as Traveler where you can just die, but it's definitely like really take it serious. This is not a balanced system, meaning smart decisions matter early. The game does not protect you from bad builds. So if you went in and you're really thoughtless about the skills you're choosing or the options you're taking, when you get in game, you might be like, you get to a certain part, you're like, man, I fucking wish I would have took that skill. The game does not make it easier on you. It's even harder because you didn't choose the skill. I think there's pretty much a limit on how much you can go. I mean, really, it's on the game master at a certain point, I guess, that they wouldn't want to let you extend anything. Because even though it is raw to a point, rules is written, I mean, there's some areas where it says, yeah, it's a bit of a guidance here. Some guys might only let you spend so many years. So it depends on what they want to do the game. Like if they don't want an extremely high ranked character starting off the game for various reasons for their plans, they might only let you try for a certain rank. And nothing in the game says that you can't limit like that, right? I like to say that bad builds can be challenging or even just amusing. Well, they create challenges, so there's nothing wrong with it. I agree with you, Zay. It's really how you players choose to experience your limitations. It might suck that you can't just get the thing done, but now you got to find somebody who has a skill. Now there's a reason to go role play and interact with people and try to get something done. So everything, if you just live in the moment and you just enjoy playing the game, be it your benefit or your negative, if you just enjoy the experience overall, anything, bad or good, can be fun. I 1,000,000% agree with you. And it can be amusing. Sometimes it can be easy and that can feel good. Sometimes it can be funny that you can't just find what the fuck you need. Right? Or even funnier, you got to go talk to somebody crazy. It's like nobody around here has it, but that fucking old man out there that will shoot everyone, he might talk to you. He can do the thing. So that's where again, the story can become exactly interesting. You're exactly right, Zeg. That is exactly how you create flavor, sometimes through limitation. So it doesn't protect you from bad builds. But unlike the last couple of games I talked about where it's more about who the character is, this one goes back to being party composition matters more than usual because of specialization, because you need a variety of different people with different skills. You need someone who is a pilot. You need someone who can handle tech. You do need someone who can fight because this game is not just about avoid fighting. Like I said, it leans into the fighting. So you should have somebody who can fight. You need someone who can solve problems, investigate, know shit. So it really is important that you don't just have everybody doing one thing. And so party composition matters, and not just who the character is. Who the character is matters, but also party composition. Last two games I've covered, it just doesn't matter about party composition. It's secondary to the game. It matters who the character is. This one just sort of goes back to leading into the thing, right? If the group ignores this, gaps show up immediately in play. It's like, well, you have a couple guys that can handle tech, but you don't get a guy who can handle fighting. That can be the problem in areas of because what it's saying is each one of these things are different areas of the game. And you at least might want to have somebody who can handle that one area of the game. And at any point, if you don't have someone who can handle a certain area of the game, as Zach says, can be amusing, but becomes very challenging, right? Advancement in this game with characters is slow and earned. You do not rapidly evolve. Skills improve over time. Growth is gradual. Your starting build matters a lot. You live with your early decisions, meaning you're not just upgrading in levels and pumping your character up. So what you choose early, you're stuck with that for a while. And upgrading is a slow process. So just understand where you're at any given time usually means you're there for a while. This is what you have. This is what you're playing with for a while. So just keep that in mind, right, when you're making a character for this game. Mindset going in. I've been using Space Opera's character creation to generate PCs for a game based on Tomorrow's Birds, Masama Tezuka Omega. It's a look. If you understand the character creation thing, it's fun. Space opera's character creation is fun. It just what it's warning you is don't be careless, because the game itself is not nice to you when you're careless, right? But is it fun? Is it because just not the game master is sitting back creating interesting stuff to have fun with. It really makes your character really important. So I mean, if you're a nerd, if you're a deep nerd, and you like to sit back and really be almost like a fucking artist, man, you can make some really, really fun, amazingly interesting characters. But like Zay said, that's a very important point. You can turn anything into fun, even without picking something. So a mistake doesn't always end the game. It could actually bring you a humorous or interesting circumstance or situation where you need to come up with a way to solve the issue where you didn't pick that thing with the character, right? So it is what you make of it at the end of the day, but it just means it can be more challenging even under the fact that you're doing it amusing. So mindset going in, players should approach creation as, what role do I want to fill? What can I reliably do with that? What can I not do? Accept your limitations. So just be willing to say, okay, I'm going to pick a character to do this, but that means I can't do these other things, and then that's not going to be your strong area. Nope. I'll figure it out later. Or not, I'll figure it out later. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure. So you don't want to have the mindset of, I'll figure it out later, just casually pick. No. It's all about figuring it out as you're making the character. Bottom line here, character creation in space opera is deliberate, role-focused, consequential. You are building a functional part of a crew, not a solo hero. If done right, the group feels like a real sci-fi team. If done poorly, the weaknesses show up immediately in play. It will be noticeable, because everything you're doing is going to be calling upon these things right away. So pretty much early on, if you're limited, you're going to know it. It's not like you're going to find that out later. It's pretty early on. You're going to encounter the limitation. Okay. Space opera setting. There is no single locked setting. The game gives you a framework to build a universe, not a predefined one you must follow. So it doesn't give you an already created universe. It gives you all the tools for the game master to build one. So you can build the galaxy. You can decide what that is. So it's like the sandbox thing. It doesn't have a world that you have to buy separately. It doesn't have modules that you need to get. The game comes in with the tools to say, hey, you can build a world and you can run a sandbox. So you don't need modules and you don't need a setting separate from the game. You can just take the game as it is, like a toolbox, and go. It's a toolkit, not a fixed universe. Unlike something like Traveler, which leans into a more defined structure, space opera does not lock you into one empire, one timeline, one canon history. Instead, it gives you rules to build star systems, governments, factions matter, alien species, technology level. So if you like creating new stuff, holy fuck, you'll love this. Cool. Greg is on tonight. I just tell this right up his alley. But if you like creating stuff, if you're a creative person, it makes creating stuff easy. It gives you the tools to create so you don't get lost in your creating stuff, but you can create the aliens, the technology levels, meaning the setting is whatever you construct using the system, which helps you construct it. So it will tell you, give you ideas. It will give you everything you need to be creative without blowing your head up. That's what you'll appreciate. It means a lot of people that might not be super creative can still get their ideas out in a creative way with the help of the system without getting themselves lost, which is really good here. Default assumption, large-scale galactic civilization. Even without a fixed setting, the game assumes interstellar travel exists. Multiple inhabitants, worlds exist. Contact between species is common. You are dealing with a connected galaxy, not isolated planets. So even though it's not already built, the game just assumes this stuff will exist even in the world you're creating. So it acts like there's a setting, if you get what I'm saying. Like the system just acts like there's a setting after a certain point. It just acts like there is going to be a setting with this stuff in it. Factions drive the setting. Factions. The setting comes alive through factions, governments, empires, federations, local systems, corporations, resource control, tech dominance, military forces, criminal groups, pirates, smugglers. These groups compete, trade, fight, manipulate. Your campaign emerges from their conflicts. So when it says you don't need to create a plot up front, the idea is the plot will be created through what you're putting together here. So the bigger political system of trade for the governments, or the corporations, the competition, who's trying to own what, everyone's trying to run everything and own everything. In a way, it just develops a plot. That's what it's saying. You don't need to build one. One will just develop in front of you. Right? You'll see it. You'll be able to put it together. You don't need to pre-do it. You start the game, it will come to you. Yeah, creating stuff is cool. I made a few new weapons in Cyber Racer Cyberpunk. Got that covered. Love that game. I even hack job, pardon the pun, a mine hacking system in like the video game. I get what you're saying. Cyberpunk, I covered the old school tabletop role-playing game. You can go check that out if you haven't already, Zag. Also just like making places for them to go, all these new NPCs. This is up your alley, dude. Because it's what it's saying is creating is not hard. So you don't need to how you might have to go create something from scratch and it takes you forever. That's not this. This is going, we already had the things to speed up the creation. So you don't got to take forever to fucking just spell this thing out. But you can now create your ideas, give it your name, give it your aliens, but it gives you rules and stuff you can fill in right away. So you don't got to come up with everything from scratch and blow your head up. In a way, it's leading into it like the video game to a degree, where it's giving you a lot of things to work with, and then you just add on to it, and it becomes your thing with the layers behind it. That's what this is doing for you. So if you ever try space opera and you're trying to create something on your own, yeah, this is definitely up your alley. Definitely up your alley. Okay. I said factions drive. So trade, manipulate, your campaign emerges from conflicts. So that's plot builds itself through this stuff, right? Like there should already be somewhat an assumed plot that you just assume one's going to exist. You got to figure out as a game master what you want that to be through creating these things. Planets are meant to be different from each other. Each world should feel distinct. Environment, desert, ocean, frozen, jungle, artificial, tech level, primitive to highly advanced, culture, isolationist, expansionist, corporate control. Important. Don't make copy and paste planets. Variety is part of the design expectation. So make sure because remember, it doesn't make you do everything from scratch. So don't be afraid to come up with a variety in the few things you got to add to create variety. Don't do too easy, get too lazy, and just go, oh, here's a bunch of frozen. No. There can be stuff like that with creative ideas behind them, but just saying, try not to get too, this is one thing. If not, you'll get away from what it's trying to actually give to you. And the variety creates things for you, again, for the plot, for the story, for what the characters are doing. So it's interesting to go to all these different types of planets, desert, frozen, whatnot. Alien species are a major component. The system expects multiple intelligent species, like different societies, different mentalities. Aliens are not just cosmetic, they affect interaction, skills, problem solving. We know a lot more now about exoplanets. I have an app called Exoplanets with a database of what they have found out there. It's crazy. That would be really effective for something like this. So, yeah, no, don't. You're right, Philo. There's a lot of things, because this is old school, but there's a lot of things you could use from now that would work well with this. Like, fucking work beautifully. It would expand this to a degree without you needing to get a new edition. You can go back and get the old game and still just expand it with knowledge you have now. And the ideas are all here to fill other gaps in. So you're pretty good, right? I mean, so 100% you're right there. definitely check out advancements and see how that can fit. Because I'm sure if the designers at the time of making the old school version of this knew about this stuff, you could see how it already applies. And even if it doesn't have everything exact, it wouldn't take much just to look at what's already there, make an adjustment, and go, this is how I fit this in. And it works. Like, you got to be careful. It is a raw rules is written type of world game, but there's some things where if it just makes sense to adapt it in, you can. You can make that work, no doubt. Technology level shapes everything. Tech is not flat across the setting. Some areas, advanced chips, weapons, medicines. Others, limited or outdated tech. This creates trade opportunities, power imbalances, conflict zones. It just creates, again, this is all this stuff in itself will develop a plot in front of you that you'll be able to see. That's why in old school games, when you hear plot with the new school talk, well, bullshit. Even D&D, we need a plot beforehand. No, D&D didn't get that right too well. But if you look at the side games, there's a lot of things like the way they put pressures in that. If you take it back to D&D, you can apply this stuff to D&D, and then you can just let a plot develop in the game, right? A lot of the advice I give out, here's what happens to a lot of egotistic people around, especially around the internet. Because everyone wants to be right or know more than you. So if I just know more than some of these guys, I'm giving out advice. My advice is, well, for some younger guys that don't have an ego, it's great. I can help you with your game, right? But a lot of guys that are very egotistic, I get a lot of private messages over the years I've done this stuff, where they'll come to me and say, man, I don't, okay, fair enough, you saved my game. Because I know I'm not wrong and I have real experience. So I'm not just bullshitting people or trying to make stuff up. So when I give advice, a lot of guys have to flop and have a bad experience with something before they finally come and go. They're desperate. Like, they have to have a desperate moment. Some egos are just like that. They look, folks, Steven, I know more than him. Okay, fair enough. But I guarantee, kid, no matter how old you are, even if you're older than me, if the shit hits the fan, you keep running into bad luck, at one point, you'll come to my advice. I guarantee it. And when you come to me out of desperation, here's the good news I got for you. It's not an ego or brag thing, because I like to give back to the hobby. So it's not an ego boost. I don't care if you tell me in private. I don't need to brag about it. What I tell you is real. My advice is real. I've actually done this stuff. It's all real. It's not ego trying for me to bullshit or pretend to be somebody I'm not. Right? So when the guys get desperate and they finally get past their ego, they're desperate to get things right, and they finally come to my stuff, I'll save them. Like, my advice will work. So I always tell them that. I get a lot of guys that don't always come to me publicly, but they'll come to me privately. Some of the younger guys come to me publicly, like over the years, and tell me, like, you saved my game. Thank you for saving my game. No, because it's not a brag thing. I ran so many games, so many sessions for so many different types of players that I've ran into the good players, the good groups, the bad groups, the bad this. Running online, I ran like fucking tons of sessions online, tons of people online. So I did a recent online gaming advising, telling people to be careful. As usually in person, because of stimulation, that you can be, players can be more picky about the game master they choose to play for. Online, it's a complete reverse. A complete reverse. That's when the game master needs to become picky about who they're willing to run the game for, not the other way around. Because it's not the same stimulation. So I need to get players that can commit without being like, the stimulation in person, face to face, can bring a lot of people back to your table. And it's a social event, so it's more pressure for social events. Online's not the same thing. Yeah, it's not a brave thing, Black Rose. I'm really trying to give back. So if people think I'm saying it to feed my ego, it's not. I want to give back, because when I came into the hobby, when I made mistakes, there were the guys who were around more than me, that were wiser than me, that were really good at the stuff, and I just had no ego about it. If I started having problems with players and I wasn't figuring out something right away, I'd be like, man, here's my issue. I go over, talk to guys I knew experience, but I knew they weren't egotistic. Like, they approach it like me. They want to give back. They'd be like, well, here's what I did. And I knew these guys actually did a lot of gaming, so I knew they were going to tell me something just to make themselves sound impressive. They would tell me something that actually worked, and I'd be like, okay, go back, and it worked. And you're welcome. I really do. I like giving back. It's not an ego boost, but it is sad there's so many egos around here that can't take some advice. Because I want to help them. I'll hear some guys on streams where I'm hearing their problems or they're saying out loud, and I'm like, I know these guys wouldn't like me and they probably would never listen to me, but I could save them the trouble they're going through. I know so much about the trouble they're going through, but they've ran the game for 40 years, so they don't need my help. Just saying. Okay, so some places, so travel and distance still matter. Even with interstellar movement, time exists, routes matter. Some places are harder to reach. This creates strategic positioning, isolation in certain regions, risk versus reward decisions. Tone is broad, but leans into structure. Leans structured. You can run military campaigns. You can. Exploration campaigns, trade and smuggling campaigns. It depends on the missions you guys are going to be focused on. You could even do a variety, right? Or you could even do diplomatic and intrigue-heavy campaigns. And all these can have their different types of plots. They can even lean into each other. So you can do specific focus or mix. But the system itself naturally leans to structured, grounded sci-fi, not pure cinematic chaos. What it's saying is you can go after a focused military campaign, but in reality, it is saying more about variety. That's the grounded part. Like you could be working for the military, you could go do exploration, you could do variety. Your setting emerges from play, like the plot emerges from what you're doing. You don't need everything built on day one, like the plot. You don't need the whole world built. You just need your local, what you're using. Start with a region, a few factions, a handful of systems, then expand as players move. So as they move out to the world and they want to know more about what's out there, you start building more of what's out there as they're going. The setting grows based on player decisions. Players lead the game. Sandbox. They're choosing where to go. Again, if you pre-make it, what you'll do is start directing them there. What happens? Railroad. This is the difference between a sandbox. Is why you don't pre-make everything. That's why you don't even pre-make too much in a sandbox in D&D. You don't pre-make too many hooks. You don't pre-make anything. You got to direct players towards. This is the crazy thing about freedom. For it to be a sandbox, they need complete freedom to guide the game. And what did I say when I was doing the sandbox for D&D video? They choose where they want to go. You play into it. I might not have any relics caught up, and the guys are like, I want to find a relic. Okay, so if they want to find a relic, they got to go research it. Well, I wasn't planning on that, but I should play to it. Okay, you could probably go to a library and search it up. They go search it up. During this time, I'm improvising some ideas for relics, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4. I tell them from the research if they roll well, they might find 2. If they roll really well, they might find 3 or 4. They can choose one, and they're going to go. And I start giving some improvised ideas to where they could go to get it. They say, okay, we'll go do that. This is what we're going to do. And then guess what I'm going to do? Start building. So now I'm going to build the adventure, but I didn't build it beforehand. I'm building it based on what is needed for where they're going. This is what this is saying to you. Based on player decision, you start expanding the world more to make it for where they're going to go. So setting grows based on player decisions. Consequences could be that they're failing stuff, so they got to go in a different direction, or ongoing conflicts. As the plot is building, you realize in your mind, you're going to have to make a different area for that plot to be a thing. So now you got to expand to make that plot, that plot that you're seeing. Okay, you got to make more for that plot to be a thing. So all these things combined could lead to expanding out. Bottom line, space opera setting is not pre-written, built by the GM using the system, driven by factions, planets, and tech differences. What makes it work? Variety between worlds, meaningful faction conflicts, starships tying everything together. It becomes a real setting when players start interacting with it and changing it. Okay. What it does better, or we'll say different, whatever way you want to take that in. Space opera stands out because it goes all in on depth and coverage, where most other sci-fi RPGs simplify. It tries to cover the entire sci-fi experience. Most games have a narrow focus. Traveler, trade, exploration, clean systems. Space opera, everything at once. Remember I said you can go, you could do the military campaign, or you could have all of it open to you. It aims to support exploration, combat, trade, diplomacy, technology, alien interaction, differences, not specialized, comprehensive. Simulation over abstraction. This is where it's different from Traveler. Where other games simplify outcomes, Space Opera breaks things down, uses detailed rules, tracks how things actually function within its logic. Example, skills are specific, not broad. You're not like a guy with just a variety of skills and you're weak on a variety. No, you're specialized. Outcomes are calculated, not guessed. Systems interact with each other as you're developing plot based on what's going on. Result feels like operating a system, not just narrating events. Starship detail is much deeper. Ships are not just transport. You deal with construction, capability, limitations. Ships influence strategy, if you want to do combat or if you're going to do survival. Options available to the party. Differences. Ship equals core gameplay layer, not background tool. I create things for my world as I inspire and flesh things out, but the actions and travel the players. Well, this is what the game is designed for, Grimdia. I get you. That's you're talking about sandboxing and building it as you go, based on consequences of the player's decision, right? Instead of a railroad. That's complete freedom. You build what you need as you go. Yeah, it's pretty much what this game is doing, but it has a backbone of factions to create plot. You don't pre-create plot. Nah, to a degree, you sometimes don't even need too many hooks at all. If you're letting players just completely decide things going, you can have a few. I'll give a hook. I never then develop the adventure from there. Because what this game points out to you, what you learn here is the more you pre-develop, the better chance you're putting people on the railroad. You're going to push them towards the things you're making instead of just making it as they go. That's how railroads will appear. Because if you're making something, you start, a lot of times guys will direct their guys towards that thing. That's when you're putting people more on the railroad in a forcible way, getting them to go down one track. If you just say, hey, you pick the lane you want to go down, and then I'll develop what you're, like based on what you're doing, that's a sandbox freedom. That's how that works. This game is all about that. You're a little late to the game, but the whole thing is about this. A lot of games are like that. Tons of them. I mean, tons of them are like that in the old school. It's just what they are. It's not something like D&D doesn't teach us a lot of. Here's, like I said earlier, the sandbox was redefined by modules because, in a way, these games were competing with D&D. How do you make a game without pre-made adventures and modules? You create the sandbox. The term sandbox was used for the non-D&D games before it was ever used for D&D. D&D tried to redefine sandbox as part of their modules, which is really just a railroad with more choices. They redefined it because it was selling, and what's happening is once you learn the sandbox mode from the other games, you don't need modules. So that's going to kill sales of modules. And D&D thought that was a threat, kill sales of modules. So why not redefine what a sandbox is? Because the term is already out there for the other games, because it's developed for the other games. And we'll say sandboxing is our modules with more choices. So that's why when I did my sandbox video, a lot of the D&D guys that don't have much experience outside of D&D were like, that's not what a sandbox is. I'm like, well, sandbox was a term used before it was ever used for D&D for these other games. And so what I am telling you is what the sandbox really was, not what modules redefined the sandbox to be, which is just a railroad with more choices. A sandbox is complete freedom. I give it detail. If you go to any of these games, including this one, what I say matches up exactly with non-D&D old school games that push sandbox. So and how do you make a game without modules, without pre-made adventures? You make it so people can just sort of run a game where the adventure is going to create itself through the open play of the players. That's what these games are made for. Open play means sandbox. It wasn't even the term used right away. But what D&D realized is it was so much more effective than their modules that to have it out there means it could hurt their module sales. And it did for a while, right? So what do? You steal the term, you redefine it, and then D&D guys that don't know much about the other games, they were arguing with my video. They're like, that's not how you sandbox, Steven. I'm like, it just means you haven't played too many games outside of D&D. Because what I describe is detailed sandboxing and what the term was before D&D ever used it. So they tried to redefine it. And so I just point this out to D&D guys. They tried to redefine it as a scam, a get you back to buying modules and pretend that that's what sandboxing is. But sandboxing is the opposite of using a module. It basically says module not needed. That's what a sandbox is. It lets the players decide where they want to go in the game. It's like plot. Plot is also related to modules in pre-made adventures. So what do you find in the other games? In these games? No plots pre-hand. Plots will develop from the way the game is set up to be functioning. Like the plot will just create itself in front of you. So you need a pre-made plot. That's also where it's like, well, now plots are important to D&D. So you hear a lot of D&D guys without much experience. Well, plots are really important. I'm like, well, here's 50 other games outside of D&D that prove pre-made plots are meaningless. Like it doesn't mean plot in general is meaningless. It just means plot will develop itself through what the players do and through what you're creating in the game. You don't need no pre-made plot. But if you lack experience in the old school, which is what a lot of D&D guys lack experience. So when I talk, the reason I get into a debate with a lot of the D&D guys is they lack experience. That's why they disagree with me. It's like Frank. It's like the voice thing we talked about. Frank Metzger. Frank Metzger never did special voices. Best DM out there. Best DM I've ever known in my life. All his players never did voices. Best players I've ever met in my life. His games were deep. His characters were fucking spot on. If you met a female merchant in his game, that was a female merchant. Right? Deep. And if somebody comes around and says, well, I do this, so that means I might be a better DM than that guy. Oh, you're not better than Frank Metzger. So don't fucking play that game on me. I thought about modules, thinking to myself, what if the players want to do this or that in my campaign? Let my players do the sandbox thing. They have overall goal, but they have to get there. Or even just ignore it, so be it. They've been going off the tangents and all sorts of happen, like almost create their own goals. See, Zeg, I think these games understood that's what players wanted to do. But modules, what were they really originally made for? Like really made for. That's what people forget. It's a control of the hobby. Tournament play. They're made for tournament play for a shared world, for consistency. See, but here's what's dangerous to that. It's these other games that are being made based on wargaming theory, which is they're more wargaming than D&D. They start realizing you don't need that at all. You have this, but it kills sales of modules. And modules were high for a minute, but imagine a company building itself off of sales of modules. And then suddenly a bunch of players, a bunch of people in the hobby realize, well, we don't fucking need these. We just need this. And instinctively, what they found out from just play testing is most players just want to do what they want to do. And that's what you're talking about, say. You're not wrong at all. You're just experiencing the natural outcome of play. You have a railroad or a module that's directing a plot and adventure. Adventure, railroad. What are you finding your players wanting to do? Fuck the adventure. I want to go to here. But see, that's hard if D&D isn't helping you deal with that. So D&D doesn't have proper structured sandboxes. If you want to learn proper sandboxing, really proper sandboxing, go to the outside games like Space Opera here, which will teach you real sandboxing, not the redefined version that is meant to be glued to modules, but real sandboxing. So the D&D guys in the last few days have been cursing me out because I put the video up and I disagree with what they were saying. That's not sandboxing. This is sandboxing. They're like, you're wrong, Steven, you're wrong. I'm like, no, you just don't know. So sorry to bust your fucking bubble on that one. You just don't know. You lack experience. So when you meet a guy with real experience like me, who's done the 50 games and I'm not full of shit, I can start telling you stuff you don't know. I can tell you the sandbox term existed before it was ever used in a D&D module. It's just it's redefining what sandbox means so they can keep selling modules. It's a fucking scam. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion. That's an opinion. That's an opinion, not fact. Okay. Let's get back to this. So strong role specialization. Characters are not interchangeable. Skills are narrow enough that each player fills a real function. You feel the absence of a role immediately. Result, crew-based play feels real. Team dependency is high. So again, unlike the last two games where it's about who the character is, what I like about this is it leans back into roles are important, party structure is important. Scale is built into the system. The game handles personal actions, ship-level decisions, multi-system movement, all within the same framework. Differences, it doesn't switch modes, it expands outward. It supports any sci-fi tone without changing. Any changing systems. You can run military, exploration, corporate, smuggling, first contact without swapping systems. Why? The rules are not tied to a single theme. They are built as a general engine. Consequences are consistent. Because of the structure, actions have predictable outcomes. The world reacts logically. Difference. Less GM decides on the fly, more system determines the outcome. So the system is going to help the game master not have to do a lot of improvising. It's already built in with outcomes, reactions to what characters are doing. It's a little bit of you put the flavor on top of it, but you get an idea. It's directing you for the sandbox. It's helping you run the sandbox, which is good. It's made for the sandbox. It assumes pure freedom. It rewards system mastery. The more you understand it, the smoother it runs, the more options open up. Players and GMs who learn it gain efficiency, control, better results. It does not handhold. The game assumes you will learn it, you will manage it, you will apply it correctly. Differences, it doesn't simplify for accessibility, it expects effort from players and game masters. It feels like running a sci-fi operation, not just playing one. This is the biggest distinction. You are managing a crew, operating a ship, navigating systems, not just acting out scenes. Bottom line here, space opera does better or different by covering everything instead of narrowing focus, choosing simulation over simplicity, making ships, roles, and systems central to play, delivering a structured, consistent universe. It stands apart because it doesn't try to be easy, it tries to be complete. I cover everything. Okay, so when you look into what the company says, as I always tell you, these aren't my opinions. These are what the company put out for the criticisms it was receiving at the time and the answers it gave back. Because remember, a company can't come up with some petty arguments telling you to fuck off. So this is the complaints they got back in the day. One, it's too complex versus it's deep incomplete. Criticism, too many rules, too many tables, hard to learn and run. Defense, it covers situations thoroughly. You don't need to invent rules constantly. Once learned, it becomes consistent. Character creation takes too long. Criticism, slow process, easy to make mistakes, not beginner friendly. True. It's not that these things are wrong. Defense, you end up with defining roles, meaningful differences between characters, choices have real weight. What the game is saying, what they would say to you is, yeah, it's not beginner friendly, but it's unforgiving about that fact. Because it's assuming like it just doesn't care about the wider majority. It's made for the hobbyist, especially for wargamers. So it just says it's made for the thinker, not for the guy who needs an easy time. You need an easier time getting in? Wrong game, dude. Like, these are the type of guys, if they were telling you honestly, they'd be like, what are you doing in this hobby? This hobby's not made for you. Again, the newer school is made for those people. Old school was made for the hobbyist, the core. For basically more like the wargamer. That was the assumed customer base when they started making this, because you can't assume there's even going to be a customer base for a tabletop role-playing game, not in the early days. The only thing you have to compare to that you're going to build the game off is wargaming. And you already know what they're like. Wargamers are fucking just, yeah, it takes forever. Nothing's easy about getting in. So why would tabletop role-playing games made for those people be anything different than the war games they're already playing? They're not beginner-friendly. They're not even supposed to be beginner-friendly. That's why, even though they were getting complaints, but here's what's happening. Non-war gamers are the ones giving them complaints. It'd be like slow. They say slow. Slow to play. Like criticism. Resolution to take time. Can take time. Players wait while systems are checked. Defense. Players plan more. Think ahead. Actions feel deliberate. Not rushed. Too much bookkeeping. Defense creates pressure. Decision-making. Consequences. Without it, the game loses its structure. So it's saying all the things that most people coming into the hobby that aren't wargamers have an issue with. It's saying, well, yeah, we made it for wargamers. We made it for the hobbyist, the niche, not for you. That's what it's saying. It's unforgiving about the fact that it's not made for the majority. But the majority are going to end up being the customer base that picks up WotC, becomes the majority of D&D people later that adjust how they play the game and don't play survival, play more to action and stuff like this. Just is what it is. No defined setting. Defense, well, you can build any type of sci-fi setting. You're not locked into a specific tone or lore. Contrast often made with Traveler, which gives more structure out of the box. So it's not every game was unsympathetic, but even those games, even Traveler, is still made for the wargamer. It's a wargamer that made the game. Hard for new players. Defense works best with players willing to learn their roles. Rewards investment over time. So it's looking for the type of people that it's not about being new. It's about being the person going to invest like you would into a war game. So if you're looking for easy, it's just like, again, it'd be like, what are you doing in this hobby? But that's the attitude of the old school. What are you doing in this hobby? Just wrong hobby. Go play checkers. Go play cards. And if there was MMOs, they'd be telling you to go play MMOs. This is the old elite stance of hobbyists. And this is the elite mindset of wargamers. Wargaming was hard to get into. You get into wargaming, now wargaming is softened up, but if you go back to old school wargaming, you wouldn't last. And they had no sympathy. But imagine getting to the games that are made for them called tabletop role-playing games or role-playing games, but it's made for wargamers. It comes with the same attitude. It's unsympathetic. A few games got made by non-wargamers that would definitely be more appealing to some of the people that were complaining about games like this, like Tunnels and Trolls. Or Call of Cthulhu was a bit more leaning towards new players and Tunnels and Trolls, right? Palladium is a little bit more like D&D, trying to be friendly. But there's some old Palladium games where, I've never talked to Kevin about this myself, But if I were to talk to Kevin, I imagine he had some of the same attitude. Like, go back to the Heroes Unlimited game. That's not easy to get in if you're new. That he's going to be in the mindset of, yeah, it's meant for people that are going to be using this and ready to invest. Herd thinking. And that's pretty much what it comes down to with the criticisms over that game. So in this game, you can't wing it. It rewards notes and organization. So the more you really have your shit together. Ships create identity for the campaign. So ships are really important in the campaign. It handles in between play well. So when you're not out doing the activities and you're doing other things, it's like it handles in between, like not just big moments, travel time, repairs, planning, resource management. These aren't skipped. They're part of play. Result, campaigns feel continuous, not just scene to scene. Like you feel like you're always playing and the game is always taken care of. Aliens are more like reskins. Differences are not visual. They affect interaction capabilities, approach to problems. Meaning, encounters feel different, not just reskinned humans. Even though there is reskinning, there's enough difference in what's going on. Economy and trade, something in the vein of Traveler, can become real gameplay, real serious part of gameplay. It scales up without changing systems. Early mistakes echo later. Weak skills, poor ship choices, bad resource decisions. They don't disappear. They create long-term consequences, campaign continuity. It works best with stable groups. That's where I tell you, you can get a lot of people out there, but a lot of these games are not made for the majority. It is made for you to get one of the hobbyists separated, the smarter players. If you bring someone who's more I tag along with the smarter players in the D&D group, those tag along guys that ride the coattails of other players, they're not going to be good for a game like this. The guys who are the ones that take the lead, who have the coattails, you want a group of them playing this, not the guys that hang on to the coattails. How many times have you heard, even from the old school to the new school, it's like basically the players, who the good players are in the group. They had to carry the other players. Whenever you hear players going, like 2 or 3 of the players in a larger group going, yeah, we carried a lot of these guys. And the rest of the group won't deny this. They carried. In games like this, you need all guys that carry other guys. And the guys that get carried, these games are not made for them. But they're unforgiving about this fact. Like, this is old school. So this is for the hobbyists, not for the guys who ride the coattails. Just unforgiving about this stuff. So bottom line here, Space Opera has a lot of under the surface. It rewards organization. The ship defines the campaign. In between, gameplay matters. Trade, aliens, and scale all have depth. Early decisions carry forward. It feels the way it does because it's not trying to guide you. It's giving you the tools and expecting you to use them properly. So it just leans back on you and it says, it's on you. It's on you. And for guys that are going to ride the coattails, they're the guys that want the other guys in the party to do the work. They want the other guys in the real life group to do most of the thinking. These games are not made for them. They're very unforgiving. So a lot of old school games, the reason they're almost hidden gems is because the majority that tried to participate with D&D, they would be no good to them. They might play Call of Cthulhu, but that's why Call of Cthulhu was popular, because the majority could play that game. Tunnels and Trolls had a bit of a popular run in a surprise D&D and TSR. But the reason Tunnels and Trolls had a popular run is the majority could play it. Right? And some Palladium games were a bit of hand-holding later on. That's why Palladium had a bit of success. And themes help. They definitely push. There's some games out there where you look at them and that's really not for the majority. But the majority probably tried to play that because it's a popular thing, like Star Wars or Star Trek, stuff like that. It still has some of these old mindset wargaming stuff in it, where it was unsympathetic, but people were trying to play it. And then what happens in games like that is because you're taking on the majority, the standards drop. That's where I would show up and I'd be like, these guys are doing good. And I'd be like, well, I mean, people have accepted that that's good enough. See, the reason I'll disagree with some people is they'll be like, Yeah, they're playing that well, but like, well, if you brought that into the hobbyist sector, the hobbyist would expect you to get that even more right. So the hobbyist would say, no, you're not doing a good job and you need to do better. So I'm going to come up with these tricks to help you. But if you accept lower gameplay as, oh, that's pretty good and it works, well, that's where me and some people will disagree. Their lower standard is not good enough for me. But I'm a hobbyist and I'm not trying to be egotistic about it. I'm just saying my standard is here, right? That's why we disagree. Your standard's here. And if I have a standard here, it's good enough for you, but it doesn't mean it's on my level. It just means it's good enough for you down here. Right? That's all it means. All right. So yeah, and again, the sandboxing thing, I feel bad because what I said, a lot of my content goes over people's heads. I put that video out recently. It goes over people's heads because the hobbyists were probably less than 10% of the overall people in the hobby. Always have been. We're not good at holding a company up. I look back at the old school and I'm impressed that we even had a period of time before the market realized how small of a group we were. There was a period of time where companies tried to serve us, but they're experimenting. They don't know that we're only going to be 10%. How could TSR ever know we were going to be this small compared to the wider amount of people that might be interested in the games? Right? The games were made for us, but it's small. And the crossover for wargamers, that's what really killed TSR and D&D, because they just didn't lean enough into the wargaming. And then when these games come out, they were convinced that the reason most wargamers wouldn't cross over to D&D is because it wasn't wargaming enough. So they did even more wargaming. So when you hear like Bro OSR people go, D&D's a wargame, they're absolutely full of shit and they have no fucking clue what they're talking about. And they're fucking lying. They're fucking lying. Forget the chainmail attachment. It was optional. And right away, when you get to Beckmead, Mulvey, and Frank Metzger right away start using non-wargaming language because they realize, okay, wargamers didn't buy what we're doing. The majority of people trying their game are fucking actors, theater people, and non-wargame people. And so if you look at the writing for Beckmead, it completely acknowledges the lack of wargaming. And wargamers completely rejected D&D. So to pretend Dungeons and Dragons is wargaming, it's not a difference in debate or opinion here. It's just not. It leaned away from any roots it was connected to almost right away. There was a small inspiration. It just didn't draw the people in. So what these other games to compete with D&D thought, well, there's a whole crowd of wargamers. Man, what if we got that group to start buying our game? Some did. There were some, like Space Opera, gets a few more wargamers than D&D does. But just overall, wargamers, here's what I found out as I went to Warhammer. So what I found out my discovery was wargamers just don't like role-playing games. Warhammer itself was a genius. Like, it's the closest thing you can get to getting real wargamers wanting to do a bit more than just playing a war and doing some role-playing aspects. Yeah, Philo, you're right. You're right. You're 100% right. I want to do a thing on 4E this year. I've been thinking about doing it next year, but I might do it this year too, because this is the one game where because I was shocked. I talked to some wargamers I know growing up, because I did a little bit of wargaming, as you know. And they always hated role-playing games, but Warhammer, very genius for, instead of trying to make you play D&D, it steals some ideas. So usually D&D, or all these tabletop role-playing games, are built from, say, wargaming to a point. But D&D leans far away from it. D&D is so separate from wargaming that this is how separate of a game it is. Warhammer says that's so not wargaming that we're going to borrow some of the non-wargaming D&D stuff for our war game. How fucking brilliant is that? Warhammer, if you actually look at the writing when you do the research in the background, they actually think D&D has nothing to do at that stage, at the stage they take it in. They even say this has nothing to do with wargaming. D&D is not wargaming. And that was the accusation from wargamers. They're like, that's not fucking wargaming, it's bullshit. You can say chainmail is optional, but it's just trying to use some of our rules. You can fuck yourself. It's not. That was the attitude of wargamers. So again, when I see, I don't mean to pick on Bro OSR guys, but I mean, it's just one of the most full of shit statements I've ever heard in my life. It's wargaming. Well, no real wargamer ever said that. You're absolutely full of shit. Full of shit. D&D is one of the least wargaming games out there for tabletop role-playing games. It's like the least wargame one. Like, hey, wargamers that are in the bros, I just told you about Space Opera or Traveler. Why aren't you playing those? They're more up your alley. D&D is almost to the point, and Gary and them were so bitter about the lack of crossover. He was so bitter that when he gave it to Frank Metzner and Mulvey and other people to work on it for Beckme, he said, we don't got the wargamers. So they completely went in the opposite direction. And then what happens to Warhammer? Warhammer actually acknowledges that D&D has nothing to do with wargaming. The designers actually talk about D&D like it has no real connection to wargaming, but they like the ideas. So why not connect D&D to wargaming, but the other way around? Like be inspired by D&D for Warhammer. That's the closest thing you get. But here's where Philo is right. For some weird reason, for some fucking odd reason, 4E was able to do something a lot of the older... Now, here's where I would say this might be the reason why. 4E still doesn't drag in the hardcore wargamers. So Philo, I would say to you, at least on that end, no. It still fails like most tabletop role-playing games with the hardcore guys. But as wargaming advanced, they got looser to the point where there's more people accepted in wargaming, and wargaming caters to lesser players now, just the truth, part of opening up the market to make more money. And the old wargamer core complained about the new wargamers, just like the hobbyists complained about the majority that came to the tabletop role-playing thing. And it's those looser players that go to the 4E. So it is wargamers, but not the same hardcore hobbyist wargamers. But they do like 4E, and they are wargamers, so I do say that's unique. Craig, remember what bros did? Go playing Raw, Traveler, killed him. I remember that conversation, Craig, 100%. Thanks for the reminder, Craig. Craig never forgets that. That sticks up his ass on that one. Fuck them. Craig is no fan of the bros. Not a lot of guys are fans of the bros, but the bros are full of shit when they say D&D is wargaming. I'm like, that means you're not real old school. You weren't really there, and you have no idea. You have no idea how D&D is so lacking a connection to wargaming. It's inspired through people that did wargaming, but it ran away from it. And other games simply did a better job at leaning into wargaming. Like Traveler is better at leaning into wargaming. Sandboxing and some of these concepts come from wargaming more than they do anything, and they kill module play. And so, again, all the D&D guys out there going, no, you got sandboxing wrong. No, I'm just talking about what sandboxing originally was. So when the term is first used, it's never to describe anything done in D&D. It's describing what you're doing in games like Space Opera. Hate to be so egotistic with it. I was so laughing when they were saying, you're fucking wrong. You don't know what sandboxing is. I'm like, no, here's the problem. You're giving away that you lack experience in this hobby. You're giving away that you lack knowledge in this hobby. You're giving away that you know next to nothing about tabletop role-playing games. That's what you're giving away when you disagree with me. All right? Because I don't talk shit or talk out of my ass or make stuff up. So when I talk from real experience and real wisdom and real knowledge. I never just make shit up. So when I say what a sandbox is, I'm talking about the pure, real sandbox that was there before D&D ever used the term. And so when I describe what a sandbox is, I'm correct. And what you're doing is just proving to me that you've been fooled by the market. The con that they tried to redefine sandbox as to sell modules, I even said, what did I say in one of my statements? It's funny to see some of the newer D&D people that where the con from the old market lie still works on them. Remember, that was one of my comments. And people are out, you fucking don't know what you're talking about. It's like, you're giving away that I know more than you. If you say I don't know what I'm talking about, you're just giving yourself away. Proving you know next to fucking nothing about tabletop role-playing games. Like, let me guess. I got that from AI. Not from fucking decades of experience in doing 50 games. That's not where I got all this fucking knowledge. Oh, must have got it from AI. It's like real old school guys, real hobbyists like me, played like 30, 40, 50 games. Like, that was so casual to hear people that just are ignorant about this talk like, he couldn't have played that many games. That was so casual for hobbyists to do. To sit here and say I didn't do it. Whenever I talk to real old school guys that aren't as boisterous as some of these guys, they'll be like, yeah, we know you did it. We know you're not getting anything from AI. And the blueprint for the script, that's all. I never knew how to do a script for these fucking streams. So it helped me figure out how to write it out. It never wrote it out for me. I write everything out myself. It gave me the blueprint. That's all it did, was do it in bullet points. I was like, well, I can do that. Cool. I'll do it myself, but I can do that. And then I even took a whole fucking year writing these things out. So that was a lot of grinding work, and I had to do that in fucking quiet and private, and had to do all the work because it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. Now I'm doing private gaming. I'm not even telling you most of you about. We're in between all the fucking streams and work and struggle I do. I go find a friend that will sit there for 2 or 3 hours with me every so often and run some 3rd edition. So I can get to know 3rd edition better, so I can do content of 3rd edition. So every new game I'm going to cover, I'm actually playing a bit of it on purpose, just so I can actually say I know something about it. No, me neither. And I see, this is where I would agree with the great deal. There's nothing wrong with getting ideas. I've read the modules myself. Nothing wrong with whatsoever. Like, that, to me, all that is brainstorming. Like, reading a module is like talking to your friend that knows a bit about some ideas, and you two talk and you get some ideas from talking to him. So he had some ideas. To me, reading the module is all it is. I have nothing against modules. I'm just being real with people. It's not an attack on modules. It's just say modules came from tournament play, and they made TSR a lot of money. So say you're not selling all these other products, but you're selling a lot of modules. So imagine games come out to compete with you, but they give away a secret, the sandbox. And the second a DM learns a sandbox, they realize they can make their own stuff and easy without modules. And it's more fun than modules. Now, you're talking about just doing sandbox and getting ideas. You learn that from old school gaming. That's fine. Sandboxing is the way to go. But imagine TSR goes, well, that's our big moneymaker. And look at the modules they lean on, right? But you want to know what modules were? I used to pick on guys, tournament DMs. They were the most, I hate to say it, this was, I never count them as hobbyists. Most module guys, they would do raw rules as written, and they run a module. Why? Because they couldn't think to fucking save themselves. I said, why are you doing raw rules as written? Is it just because you aren't creative and you can't think outside the box? And why are you running a module? You can't come up with your own adventure? And now, not for all guys, but for a lot of guys, that was true. I said, you're fake dungeon master. You're not creative and you can't think outside the rules. Basically, you survive on what the book tells you to do. The book is your master. Here's what a module DM was. Gary Gygax said the DM is king. I'm king. A module DM, the book was king. If the book is raw and you can't make no changes, the book rules over you. That's for rule lawyers don't show up in games where the DM is king. The whole concept of rule lawyers, as far as ones that would be pestering and call what the book says over you, is they show up in games where the guy is running it completely raw and running a module. And we used to call them module DMs. We used to call it, you're not a real DM. You're not a real dungeon master. You're a fake. You're a tournament guy. Like, go have the book tell you what to do, dude. You can't think for yourself. Now, look, I'm not that hardcore anymore. I'm telling you my attitude when I was young and I was part of the hobbyist group. Right? That's why we did, like, when I hear people complaining about Thaco, I'm like, they're like, it's hard to understand. Our first attitudes back in the day was, well, all of our stuff is hard to understand. And for the people that can't understand it, you don't belong in this hobby. That was the elitist attitude. I became softer over time. But when I started coming in, that was the elitist attitude. Thaco's hard. Yeah, for guys that aren't meant to be in the hobby. Because if you need something easier, go play checkers. This is chess, right? This ain't checkers. This is chess. If you want a checkers game, go find another fucking game to play. Go play Sorry or Monopoly. Piss off. Thaco's hard. Piss off. No, it's not the hobby for you. So people used to think, well, people didn't say that was a filter. Oh, yes, they fucking did. I was around guys with Thaco. Guys directly said this is the best filter to keep out people that shouldn't be in this hobby. And Gary had famous letters from hobbyists that would piss on him about AD&D 1E. Why'd they piss on him? Because they were like, you're opening this hobby up to the fucking all these other people that don't belong here. Because remember, the hobby is made for the hobbyist. The games are made for the hobbyist. And they're actually a small group of people. They're thinkers. So they felt like if you couldn't think, if you didn't have the mind for this, you don't belong here. Now, again, I softened up over time, but this is the old attitudes. Get away from the very strict stories and plots of video games. Draw and have an organic unfolding adventure. That's a sandbox. Everything I'm teaching you here is egg. And you can do everything I'm teaching you here. Everything I'm like, not just teaching you, but telling you, I'm letting the games teach you. I don't want to drop my fucking ego in there. Sorry to have my head bust open a bit like that. That's bullshit to me. The games are teaching you that I'm explaining to you. That you can do the sandboxing yourself. Everything is organic, and you let players lead the game. And everything creates itself. The idea is like you'll realize, plots sound like they're a hard thing and they have to be built by somebody else. No, they aren't. Plots will develop in front of you easily. Like the bigger picture of I have a government over here of these factions. You can start seeing a bigger picture. Them be corrupt. They'll tie to this. They work. Once you realize how easy it is to start putting things together, you realize plots are like fucking breathing air. They're so easy that the idea that you had to create one before you started the game is silly. Pressures. That's what Traveler teaches you. That's what Space Opera teaches you. Have them on a simple job. Have them doing this. Nowhere in that does it say build a plot. It just says have the action going. And then once players get to the freedom part, they'll tell you where they want to go, and you have the factions there, and you can start seeing where they go, and you got to build more. You got to build the adventure. You got to build this. But as you're building, you start seeing, I'll have this guy be corrupted. I'll have this. And your plot will come together easy. It's not even hard work. It's easy to see it. It's what if a company wants to keep making as much money off you as they can? That's the whole trick to the market. This is where you get scammed. They got to build the plot for you. That's just a third party getting paid for something you can do. Modules. That's just people getting paid for what you can already do, like breathing air. And the sandbox is better than the module. So, I mean, you can get ideas from it, but you don't even have to. Like Craig is great here. Craig's ideas are better than modules, and it's no insult to even Grim. I get the module thing, but I would go with Craig's advice before I go with the module advice, because if you already have something that could take care of putting the game together, then you just want ideas. Well, Craig here is offering you fucking novels with deep, much more than modules are offering you for concepts, ideas, and what built even bigger things. So I would take Craig's advice with what he's giving you over reading a module any day of the week. Because if you can already build the game through sandboxing in the games, you don't need the modules plot. You don't need the modules adventure. You already got, you can put the plot together, you can put the adventure. You need ideas. A novel that Craig is offering you will have 100 more ideas in the module. Like, think about that. Like, how much more you get out of the novel. So if you're a gamer in the tabletop role-playing game hobby, reading a novel, reading is so valuable anyway to begin with. But reading a novel will get you 100 more ideas. 100 more ideas. It just, I'm a real hobbyist. So I realized, like, I put that video out saying I got to dumb down my content because it's like it blows people up. And $5 for a pulp novel, which will give you 100 more ideas. Building more is just as fun as I think. Making things as they go, do stuff, making enemies out of one gang, friends out of others. It is. And you're not, and like, you know how fun it is for your players to be able to lead the game in that way? And pressures are the secret. You ever hear the sandbox idea where your players are sitting there and they don't know what to do? Well, starting off where they already they got to pay for the ship to be built up, or they own a building and they got to pay that off, or some small pressure of, hey, if you sit around, sooner or later, this is going to catch up to you. You got to get out there and make the money. The small pressures just get them up from the table and doing something. So then you don't have the habit of players just sitting around not knowing what to do in the sandbox. So you don't need plots. You need starting pressures. Pressures, little minor pressures, not big plots, just to give your players with their characters an excuse they need to get up and make money sooner than later. If not, it catches up to them. I even let them pull a random guy off the streets once they become part of the adventure. You're naturally leaning in to what these guys are teaching. So it's just basically, at the end of the day, what I would say, Zag, is lean all the way in. Lean all the way in. What you realize is you could drop the module and just do it the way you're doing it with pure freedom. Right? You lean all the way in. Oh, they pressure on them. They can be, but it's something for them to get up and do. They'll get up and do it. They'll get up and do it. That's the thing. They will do it. And through their actions, which will be random, and they'll decide how they want to do it. Remember, it's not like pressure, you put them on a railroad. It's pressure, but what adventure they're going to go out on is still up to them. Who they're going to talk to is still up to them. What you do, here's a couple little extra things you can do. Say, create connections for them. So there's a few excuses where they don't got to go find an NPC. One or two might just come to them. It doesn't mean you have to come to them with adventure ideas or even hooks from these NPCs. It's just now they have somebody to talk to and get information from. So now, on top of the pressures, they have a connection to talk to people to help them start figuring out. Use some ideas. I think most GMs just do this with modules. Most do, Philo. You're right, but that's because they don't know. They don't know. They've been tricked into go pay for the module so a company makes more money. It's just it's a money killer. That's what the other games figure out, and they tell you the secret. The sandboxing is the secret. It just kills the whole module thing, because modules are originally for guys that can't run the games. I hate to say it. That's what I feel like. You basically, I always used to say this: a module is another game master's game. And I mean every word of it, because I'd be like, here you are, and you need another game master to make your game for you. And it's a railroad. It's a railroad. Because they have to go on that path and do that thing. It's a lot less open. Or, again, redefining sandbox to be like, well, it's a railroad, but it has more than one option. It's still a direct railroad, even if it has more than one option. A sandbox completely says the options are fucking endless. Are endless. Now, a good game just helps you deal with the randomness of the players. D&D doesn't even try to help you with a proper sandbox. That's why it leaves you out to hang. But what you do is you go play these other games or run these other games, and you learn their tools for sandboxing, and you bring it back to D&D, then you can sandbox without a problem. But D&D purposely doesn't teach you proper sandboxing, because what it would do is it would end up teaching you what you need to know to not have to buy the module. And they're not going to fucking kill their whole fucking gimmick scheme like that. Modules are a big moneymaker. Settings became a moneymaker, but they weren't continuous. So that's why they come up with all these crazy settings. Now, some of the settings aren't too bad, but settings almost become pointless. They become generic, and that's what happened to a lot of D&D settings. That's why they sucked. They were like decent ideas, but Forgotten Realms would be okay because it's more generic. But why would settings in D&D fail compared to settings in other side games? Because for a setting to be important, you have to feel it. To feel a setting, you have to face the limitations in the setting to create a certain experience in the field. If you don't put the limitations in properly and you let people play like it's just open D&D, it becomes a generic feel. Oh, I get you. And I'm not saying modules don't give you ideas. What I say with the Craig thing is a novel gives you 100 more ideas on top of giving you like the amount of ideas a module will give you. So I'm not saying they're not bad. Actually, even reading the fucking novels for Dragonlance is more effective than buying the modules for Dragonlance. Anybody will back me up on that. I know guys who love Dragonlance, and I say, well, what would you rather have if you were coming up with ideas with this sandbox thing we're all talking about right now? So I said, if you took all these tools from these other games and you could do the sandbox, you could do the stuff that we're talking about, what would you rather have? A Dragonlance novel or a module if you had to choose one? They choose the novel because the novel will give you more ideas than the modules. So it's not that you're wrong, Grim DM. The modules do give you ideas and they're cool to collect. I get it. They sell toys. They make the covers look good. It looks all nice. For nerds, it's like just getting miniatures to paint them. We're suckers for some things. I totally get it. And I'm a nerd like you. So it's not like I'm not I'm not even a big miniature guy. But I see some miniatures and I go, geez, I fucking don't even use them and I want to buy that one. So I totally feel you. It's not that you're fucking in the wrong. It's just understand in reality, the novel will give you more ideas. So it's effectively, you get more out of the novel than you would out of the module. Module is good for expanding the sandbox. It can be, but it's all pre-made stuff too. And the worst thing about a module is when you put them into your sandbox, instead of just sort of hooks that you can build up later, a lot of DMs end up pushing the guys towards the modules. And what is a module? More forced railroad. So it's just a habit. I'm not saying guys can't use them creatively, but most fail to use them in a good way. So I would say to some DMs out there, yeah, if you're going to use them in a more like player still control where they go in the game, fine. But if you're like 90% of DMs that would use the modules in the way you're suggesting, Philo, the problem is outside of some good DMs that might use them where players are still under control, a lot of DMs will still purposely push them to the module, and then you're on the Force Railroad. You're onto the Quantum Ogre. Turn left, you're still going to have the same encounter. And that's the Force Railroad that most players complain about. The Forced Railroad. They hate it. They stay away from it. That's the problem with modules. Modules are the railroad that people complain about. That's what they are. And they even worse about modules sometimes, they teach DMs to create railroads. See, the sandbox teaches you to create freedom for the players to lead the game. That's what a game like Space Opera is teaching you, or Traveler. The players lead the game. The module, here's the problem, it can fuck your head. Because even if you make your own thing, it can teach you how to make a railroad, not a sandbox must have done. It's more like just ships are pretty much straightforward. If you can add guns, like if we get down to the main rules, it's just you can start off with either a good shape or a bad shape and change its gameplay. You can add guns, defenses on it, and everything else. Very basic, uses D100 overall for the whole game. So it's really, you got to get into the details for that. But it handles it really well. And it's main aim of the game. And I agree, Philo. I will do this. We actually should do modules and sandboxing off script. Actually, we'll do that in the next off script. Let's actually talk more about that next script. It won't be the only thing, but it'd be one of the many things we could talk about on that one. Good idea, Philo. 100% right. We'll talk more, and I'll come with some more details. Maybe I'll even come with some more spaceship ideas from Frontier, Star Frontier, the Star Traveler, this game. So I'll bring those details so we can talk about that stuff in the next one. Good fucking idea, dude. That's a fucking fabulous idea. Let's do that if you guys are up for that. if you're up for that, I'd be totally down for talking. Like that be one of the things we talk about. Still got where it counts. Sometimes I like to take it from what I've already done. I've written, never published some short science fiction stories. Once had a gang which I thought fit the cyberpunk game. I love it. Every time you mention cyberpunk, I love you, Zag. I love you, Zag. We're on the same page. Others I came up with because I thought it would be cool. Modules kind of scared me off them a little bit by their nature. You're right, because it's teaching you railroad and less about freedom. And you're definitely a guy leaning into freedom. Spelljammer, yep. No, I'll actually note that after the thing. Spelljammer is one of them. Seth Skowski has some good ideas on how to use modules. No, don't. You like, if you don't understand sandboxing that well, like if you've done more D&D, which is what poor Seth has done, no picking on him, just the truth. I get how you can come up with some great ideas to use modules. The problem is, my only problem is, Philo, less than 10% of guys will use them and probably take that advice well and use them in creative ways. I'm not saying you're wrong. There's no debate here that they can be used in creative ways. So you're not wrong. We're not having a debate on that. It's just sadly, from my experience, over 90% of guys will use them carelessly. Even with Seth's advice, they use them carelessly. So it'd be nicer if more guys would use them in a creative way, but they do inspire railroading. That's the only issue. And if most players want to avoid railroads, which they do, what you do, here's what I preferably put in. Here's my thing, not modules. I'll read a novel first, like Craig would suggest, get 100 ideas, and then create a hook, not a plot hook, an adventure hook without it all being pre-made. And it's just an idea, like some notes, maybe a paragraph on what it could be. Players go to it. I want to see how the players are going to react to their characters too. And I want the chance to let it organically, like, feel it. It's like what Zag is talking about, the organic feel of they get up to it. And even though it's the hook and that, I'm looking how the players interact with it, with their characters. Oh, and then players, and see, here's what you guys have to take in. Listen to your players, because sometimes they can tell you things that you'll get to the hook, and you have it written down. They don't know what the hook is, but they're going to talk to the NPC that has the hook connection without a module. But the players, you'll ask your players what they think, or they'll say something with their characters, and you're like, okay, I'm adjusting that hook right away. We're doing that, but I'm adjusting that hook to what he said or she said. I'm introducing some NPCs, places, encounters. Don't get it wrong, Philo. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with reading them. And they're cool fucking toys. And they can give you ideas for building your own adventure. But what I would do is not so much use them, but just go, hey, and not pre-make the hook, but just get some notes down. Like if you're going to put your hook together and this module has a sort of layout, you can go, well, I like this idea from the module, this idea. So you put those couple extra little notes down. And if you still like it by the time the characters are interacting with it, you could take what you learned from the module, and now you can build that out. Like the module builds it up, the players are choosing that path. That's when it's cool. I just wouldn't take a module and go, here's something with it already laid out, right? Because, in honesty, the modules are set to levels a lot of times, so they'll set a lot of pre stuff for you. What I do is I put hooks in because the hook can always be there later no matter what level the characters are at. So just say they level above where the module would be. It just doesn't matter if I only have a hook that's not planned to a level, right? And it's not that I care too much about perfect balance, but there is outside of combat, there is balance to the level, right? So people forget, we don't worry about combat balance, say in old school, but you do worry about balance to the level in other parts of the game, of course. So once you get a hook in, a hook isn't set to a level. Modules are usually set to a certain level set. But if you only have your hooks in, that means it doesn't really matter when your players take their characters to it. Because you can always adjust it to whatever levels they're at. That's it. Without anything pre-made. Again, the ideas from the modules, as Graham was saying, and other people were saying, I totally get it. I'm not against what you guys are saying. We don't disagree in this area. it's not bad. I would just go with what Craig advises, because the novels Craig is telling you, for the 3 or 4 or 5 good ideas you get from the module, the novels Craig is advising will give you 100 more. Right? So the value, or even it's like the Dragonlance. I appreciate the Dragonlance modules. I read through some of that stuff. But if you ask me, if I was going to a player and he said, should I buy a module for ideas, because I want to sandbox a bit with Dragonlance, or the novels, I'd be like, get the novels, dude. And if he asked me why, I'd be like, well, for the 5 or 6 good ideas you can get from the modules, from the novels, you could probably get like 60 to 100 ideas for the same thing. So the value in using your time to read the novel, it's more because you get more ideas. Now, I'm purposely trying to teach people about sandboxing so they can overcome some of this stuff and learn they don't need modules. They don't need to pay a third party. Old gaming just teaches you, outside of buying the game, most of it you can build yourself. Now, some have pre-made settings, but I do appreciate a lot of games like the Chivalry game. I like that it's in the real world, so you don't need to buy a setting. It just tells you how to work. And you could even it even tells you how to make a fantasy place in the real world, so you can make your own fucking nation, and you can make your own thing, but it gives you all the tools, just like this does, Space Opera, where you don't got to buy a setting. It just tells you how to make one really easily. It gives you all the tools to make one, which is really great, because that's your ideas, right? So it's easy to build a setting, like Breathing Air. It's easy to build your plots, like Breathing Air. It's easy to build your game up without any pre-made anything, like Breathing Air. And all this stuff can be used in old school D&D, but old school D&D doesn't try to teach you it because it wants you to buy the modules. It's a market selling pitch. But I get the modules can be cool, they are great, get all that, but it's just that's the reality. They tried to turn tournament play into a thing to make more money. Like how do you just sell one game and then not have a bunch of stuff for it? Like, do you just keep selling that one game? But what if you want the customer to come back and buy something new? Just dice? Well, what do? You create the economy. You create something out of nothing. In reality, you should be able to make your own adventures. But what if a company can't afford to have you make your own adventures? Like TSR can't make all this money and stay up as an actual business. So how does it stay up as a business? It creates an economy out of nothing. It takes what you can do and has you buy what you can do. It just does it for you, but it's creating an economy. Does it need to do it for you? No. In reality, you can do it yourself. And that's why D&D understood the threat of the term sandbox. See, it's one thing to have these games defining something out there, but once a word comes up for a term, first they ignore it. So D&D, the company TSR, ignores what these other games are doing, like Traveler. It ignores it, really does. But when the term sandbox finally got created, and it started, where it could tell people you don't need to buy modules, TSR seen that as a threat. That's a real threat to it. And so what do? Redefine sandbox to fit modules, so you keep purchasing modules. Again, it's just, even if you like the modules, cool, but at least acknowledge that it was a scam to get you to keep buying a product. It's creating an economy so the business can stay afloat, right? I don't think my sister's boyfriend has bought a single module for his campaign either. Playing D&D for years. I forgot the version though, but he's also a big fan of freeform gameplay. He probably played some of the other games, like maybe Traveler or something like that. And once you play Traveler and you realize you can do it all yourself, mostly, it's more fun. I hate to say it to guys, but I find it to be more fun. It's more fun to let the players just fucking go and use Game Master. Right? It really is, because it's a lot, in reality, it is. There's part of it that's a lot less work on you, the Game Master. It comes down, here's what the old school games are. It's not about you making everything that's the hard job. It's performance. See, we focus more on the skill of game mastering. It's like, oh yeah, you can do this. I want to be a good game master. I'm going to perform well during the actual playtime. You'll notice now, like with a lot of module DMs, you'll get this. you'll see them write up a little fucking journal for their game, right? And the sessions can sound fucking exciting. You read it, and you're like, holy fuck. Go watch. This has been my issue. This is where I try not to be too big hit about this. You go watch a session, and it's boring. Now, afterward, the explanation is fucking grandiose. My explanations about sessions were boring. But if you go watch them, all the excitement is during the actual play. That's where the hype is. So afterwards, there's no way I can hype it up as much as the actual session was hyped up. Yet I go watch guys that were doing it the other way around, and it'd be like hyped up session, written note. Session is... It sounds fucking great when it's written out, but all my energy is always used during the session. So old school, the hobbyist, was more about performing as a game master than anything else. So that's where letting players do stuff, improvising, needing to keep up with stuff, being on the edge of your seat, going with things. It's in the performance is where your skill and talent as a game master is. Right? That's really where you're a good game master. It's in the performance of what you're doing. And old games, you hear the criticism all the time. This is too hard to game master. It puts too much on the game master. Not a skilled game master doesn't. See, it seems hard to people that are used to other things taking care of the game. I follow the book. Okay. All right. The book does the job for you? Yeah. Okay. Where the old games, real old games that were made especially for war gamers, they put all the heat on you. It's like, it's not even that it's meant to be hard. It's meant to be like, if you're a skilled game master, this shouldn't sound hard at all. And if it is challenging, it just means you're new to the thing. And you'll notice that the great thing about old school is once you become good at game mastering, it's so similar in performance that even World of Darkness is the same. Once you can perform well as a game master, it's really, you got to learn the mechanics or learn some unique stuff about the game. But outside of that, your performance should be good. That's why I can perform good at World of Darkness, perform good at space opera, perform good at all these different games. The hardest one that took me a bit, even like I would say the most challenging one, which is surprising me because it's more about social interaction than anything. The reason I cover Castle Falkenstein is because that one, even for a skilled game master, is fucking challenging. Castle Falkenstein is a gem. It's a hidden gem. I covered it, but it is one of the hardest, even as a skilled game master, to perform right. I mean, once you get it down, you can do it, but and it's almost meant to tease a skilled game master. Say, oh, you're skilled? Well, try to run this. Fuck. Like that game expects you to be a skilled game master from other games. So Castle Falkenstein is not good for a new game master. It's good for a game master who's already ran Space Opera, Traveler, and all this. You should have ran those before you get to Castle Falkenstein. If you go new to Castle Falkenstein, if you're just completely new to that, like just new to the hobby, I would just advise you not to even touch that game. Like, oh, you haven't game mastered before? Not that one. Not that one, dude. Like, do Space Opera, do Traveler, but not Castle Falkenstein. No. That's even above, like, you need to be a skilled game master with talent already and experience just to get good at that one. And you wouldn't think it works mostly a social interaction game, but that is the hard. It shocks you how hard that game is to run. Cyberpunk, what I like about that is it's challenging to a skilled game master on this level. It takes Traveler, and it just puts a lot of work on you to be more interactive with the players. See, in Traveler, it's on the player to play who their character is. In Cyberpunk, we're a team, baby. It's not just on you to play your character right. I am purposely meant to create situations that aren't just like in the Traveler game. They're meant to all purposely not play to one character either. I got to create situations where the situation plays to almost every character in the group and their separate little things. Holy fuck. Another game that can be quite challenging unexpectedly is some of the hero games. Like, if you do them right, it just depends on your standard. Now, a lot of people can play these games and the standards are low, right? But learning to spotlight correctly. You don't do that well in D&D, but if you want to learn how to spotlight for characters and understand how to make a weaker character be as effective as a strong character, if not more effective than the stronger character, go to a game like DC Heroes, right? Where you have Batman and Superman. Well, how can you even out that gameplay where they can play the same game and be as effective, if not ironically, Batman being more effective? You learn to spotlight in that game. I cover that well. It's just teaching you how to put Batman in a situation where his skills are necessary for him to solve something. And you definitely have the situation for Superman, but it's like if Superman, if you fly into the building, you could blow the bomb up. So Batman has to get in the building and figure out what the bomb is because he needs to investigate, which is not just something you do with superpowers. He gets the safety thing on it, figures out what you got to do, and then he can deliver that information to Superman. So now Superman can safely go down with his superpower into the thing without blowing everything up and save people. Because if not, Superman can fly in, boom, 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 because he doesn't know what's going on. You can effectively make Batman the more effective character in the game if you constantly create situations where the investigation and getting things right is more effective than just blowing up the thing or going through a wall. So suddenly you can make a game where it's Superman and Batman, but ironically, Batman is the more effective character. Some games, depending on the skills, a creative player can make their what seems like a weak skill more effective than all the other great skills and stronger characters, depending on how they use the skill. But again, these are all games made for thinking people hobbyists. So for you to make the skill more effective, you need the really thoughtful player. Again, you need the player who has coattails, not the one who rides them, but the one who has them for other players to ride. Right? They're the ones that become creative with the stuff, right? They're the hobbyists. So remember what I told you guys I do over the years is I would go into D&D, get a generic group, dumb down the game for the generic overall group, but amongst them, I'd find a smart player and I'd separate him. Like, I got another group guy, you come over here. Like, you keep playing that campaign, we keep doing that one, but I want you to play with these other players over here. So I'd introduce that guy or woman, whoever it was, to the other group, and he'd be like, oh, wow, these guys are all great players. Yeah, I purposely have, I game differently with these guys than I do over here. Because these guys are the guys with coattails, but it'll be a group of guys with coattails, not a group of guys that ride coattails, right? And maybe in a Game Master's game that was based on performance and skill. This is what the hobbyists used to bitch at Gary about. This is what built up, like a lot of the majority will sit on the throne and they act like old school. The old school is smarter players. I'm like, yeah, but a lot of you trying to sit on the throne aren't the ones they're talking about. It's the hobbyists that build up the old reputation of the old school, the advanced, the bright thinkers. It's the small portion of hobbyists that create the reputation. Yet it's funny, the vast majority of people that aren't in that hobbyist zone pretend to sit on those seats. Like, we're those guys. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. I'll know. It's just like, we created the seats. You didn't. You're just trying to sit on them. And really, when again, this is where I go back to WotC. WotC catered to these people. That's all that happened. WotC, as mad as people get, I'm like, why are you mad? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what has WotC done wrong other than cater to the gameplay that you're already doing? Well, they made superhero characters. Well, you're trying to fight in action from level 1 to 3 in D&D. Yeah. And you're going through like 5 characters potentially, right? Do you think the game was meant to be played that way? Is that what you think? You think going through 5 characters is the natural way you play the game? Like, wouldn't you consider that broken? Or because if the game is not broken, then it would tell you that you're playing it wrong, most likely, at least based on the designers, not based on my opinion. Designers are saying in most cases you'd be able to start a character and just survive. Well, how do you just survive? You start a character in a game where it's like you used to building 5. It's because you're supposed to avoid most of the threats. If not, when you do face combat, when you're forced to, you take advantage of strategy, standing in a doorway so you can't be surrounded and the monsters can't get to certain guys, or you take down the leader so you kill the moral of the group and make the rest of them run off, right? But you're mainly supposed to avoid combat if you can't do that. right? And if you do avoid the combat, in most cases, your character survives. Now, is the game diddly overall? You might want to make a backup character, not 5. D&D would accept that if you ask Gary, that would be wise to make up 1 backup character, not 5. Basically, you're just trying to play a game in a way it wasn't meant to be played. But what's WotC doing? WotC's watching you play the game that way. So WotC says, yeah, we think that's if they want to play the game based on that, shouldn't we just give them characters that have a better chance of surviving that early action? Yeah, so they catered to it. You see, WotC got it wrong. WotC just realized the majority is playing the game that way, and the majority is running the game that way. Even though the game is it's not made to be ran that way. It's not made to be played that way. So old school D&D was never made to be ran that way or be played that way. That's why you're going through 5 characters. That's why if you really think about it, that you should almost consider that a broken game, unless you're just playing the game in a way the designers never intended it to be played. So in most cases, you should be able to have a character just survive all the way through. And the game is about survival. What would be the point of survival if all your characters are dying? Why would you keep hearing that repeated to you? The challenge is for you to survive, not lose characters all the time. Wouldn't that go against if you're making 5 characters and just going through this? That's a survival. That's a death grind. That's a fucking meat machine. So if the game is all about the better player survives, that means you're surviving with the first character you make. And the better player is the players that are avoiding the combat or avoiding the threats that kill them. So you're careful with the traps, but early games, you might learn. You're going to learn. They don't want you to know this right away. It's on hand-holding. So the chance that you're early as a new player learning if the trap kills you or the gelatinous cube kills you is you're supposed to learn and get to a stage with experience that you could take a character in, initially the first character, and survive. Not have to make a 5. Because the game is saying the better players survive. They don't bring 5 characters to the game, they survive. That's what it's all telling you. So, just trying to teach people the proper old school way. And that's all. And I'm doing it through just giving people facts so they can be less offended by the whole thing. It's like, guys, you've been spending decades playing the game wrong, not from me saying it, the designer saying you're playing it wrong. So most people play D&D old school wrong based on what the designers intend. And most people for decades have not known that. And I don't want to piss them off by just correcting them straight out. So what I do is just bring the facts to them and go, here. See? All right. It's quarter to. It's almost 3 hours. I'm happy. I like the idea of talking about the ships, talking about the module stuff, bringing some more information on that in the next off-script thing. Bushido is Saturday. And then I'll be having a few drinks of whiskey, Gibson whiskey, on Sunday. Well, I'll be covering Shadowrun. Now, before I go, you're welcome there, Craig. Oh, here, I'll just mention this very quick. And what do you want to spend time on that? I'll just go. I believe Ghostbusters RPG is one of the games I'm using to replace, you're welcome, Monkey, to replace the war games and stuff like that. So I am, just a last heads up, I will be doing wargaming, but I'm going to be making a YouTube channel for wargaming content. So I'm working on that right now. That won't be instant, but that will be coming up, I hope, soon. But I'll be working on a channel just for the wargaming stuff separate because it does fuck with the algorithm in YouTube. It doesn't. Sadly, I'm doing tabletop role-playing games, and they just don't match them up well. I hope you can Tuesday. That's going to be Sunday, same time as always, dude. Shadowrun. Bushido, if you do make it, Saturday is Japan Feudal. That's going to be fucking good if you do make it. All right, Black Rose, as always. That's all you guys have to do is sit here and be entertained. Yes. Okay, I love y'all.